The morning light filters through the carved stone windows of the Scribble School in Memphis, casting gentle patterns across the papyrus scrolls that line the walls. Here, in this sacred space where knowledge flows like the eternal Nile, young Kamwesit sits cross-legged on a reed mat, his writing palette balanced carefully on his lap. The familiar weight of his reed pens feels natural in his fingers, worn smooth by countless hours of practice forming the sacred hieroglyphs that connect the mortal world to the divine. The air is thick with the scent of crushed minerals and tree sap, the ingredients that create the vibrant inks which breathe life into words. Kamwesit dips his reed into the black ink, made from soot and honey, and continues copying the ancient text before him. Each symbol flows from his pen with practiced grace, the sacred ibis representing Thoth, god of wisdom and writing, the gentle curve of water ripples, the steady strength of the reed shelter that protects the growing grain. Footsteps echo softly against the limestone floor, and Kamwesit looks up to see a palace official approaching, his white linen robes pristine in the morning light. The man's weathered face carries the dignity of one who serves in the Pharaoh's court, and golden amulets gleam softly at his throat. Behind him walks the school's master scribe, whose kind eyes have guided countless young scholars through their training. Kamwesit, son of a Menhotep, the official speaks, his voice carrying the measured cadence of formal address. Your skill with the sacred writings has reached the ears of those who serve our divine Pharaoh. Your symbols are clear as the morning sky, your knowledge of the ancient texts as deep as the Nile's blessed waters. The young scribe sets down his palette with trembling hands, his heart beating like distant temple drums. The honor of recognition from the palace feels as vast as the desert itself, as overwhelming as the sight of the great pyramids rising from the golden sands. The kingdom requires a faithful recorder, the official continues, one who can travel our great river and capture the stories of our people. From the quarries of Aswan to the papyrus marshes of the Delta, every town and village holds wisdom that must be preserved. You have been chosen to be the Pharaoh's eyes and hands, to document the daily life of those who make our kingdom strong. Kamwesit bows his head, feeling the weight of this sacred responsibility settle upon his shoulders like a fine linen cloak. To be entrusted with preserving the stories of the people, the fishermen who cast their nets at dawn, the farmers who tend the flooded fields, the craftsmen who shape clay into vessels of beauty. This is a calling that connects him to the very heartbeat of Egypt. The master scribe steps forward, placing a gentle hand on his student's shoulder. Remember, young Kamwesit, that writing is the gift of Thoth himself. When you form each symbol, you participate in the divine act of creation. Your scrolls will outlast the stone temples, your words will carry forward through generations like seeds on the river's current. Through the window, the Nile flows past in its eternal rhythm, its surface catching the morning light like scattered jewels. Boats drift by with their triangular sails filled with the gentle north wind, carrying traders and travelers on the river's ancient paths. This same water has nourished the land for countless generations, and now it will carry Kamwesit on his journey of discovery. The palace official presents a leather satchel, worn smooth by many journeys. Inside, Kamwesit can see the tools of his trade, fresh reeds for pens, cakes of precious ink, rolls of the finest papyrus. But more than tools, these are instruments of immortality, the means by which fleeting moments become eternal truth. Your boat awaits at the harbor, the official says. The captain knows the river's moods as intimately as a mother knows her child. He will carry you safely to each destination, and the local governors have been instructed to provide whatever assistance you require. As Kamwesit rises to his feet, he feels the sacred duty settling into his bones like wisdom itself. The scrolls he will create will become part of the great library of knowledge, joining the countless texts that preserve the glory of Egypt for future generations. Each word he writes will be a small act of worship, honoring both the gods and the people whose stories deserve to be remembered. The morning light grows stronger, and somewhere in the distance, temple bells ring out their gentle call to prayer. The Nile continues its ancient flow, patient and eternal, ready to carry its newest chronicler into the heart of the kingdom's living story. The morning sun cast long golden fingers across the Nile Delta as Kamwesit made his way toward the papyrus workshops. The air was thick with the sweet scent of river water and growing reeds, and somewhere in the distance, the gentle splash of oars could be heard as fishermen began their daily journey upstream. The scribe's sandals whispered against the well-worn path, worn smooth by countless generations of craftsmen who had walked this same route to their sacred work. As he approached the workshops, the first sounds that greeted him were the soft, rhythmic tapping of mallets against wood, a percussion that seemed to match the steady pulse of the great river itself. The papyrus makers had been at work since before dawn, their skilled hands continuing traditions that stretched back through the mists of time, back to the very first pharaohs who had ruled this blessed land. Kamwesit paused at the entrance to the largest workshop, watching as an elderly craftsman named Amenhotep selected papyrus reeds from neat bundles that had been harvested at precisely the right moment. The reeds were tall and proud, their triangular stems catching the early light like spears of green gold. The old man's weathered fingers moved with practiced certainty, choosing only those stems that were perfectly straight, perfectly mature, their cores rich with the fibrous pith that would become tomorrow's scrolls. With reverent care, Amenhotep began the ancient process. His bronze knife moved in long, smooth strokes, peeling away the outer green skin of the reed to reveal the pale, precious interior. The discarded strips fell like emerald ribbons to the workshop floor, where they would later be gathered to feed the sacred fires of the temple. Nothing was wasted here, nothing forgotten. Each part of the reed had its purpose, just as each person in the kingdom had their role to play in the great tapestry of Egyptian life. The craftsman's apprentice, a boy no more than 12 summers old, gathered the precious pith strips in his small hands, arranging them with the careful attention that only the young can possess when learning something truly important. His master nodded approvingly, his eyes twinkling with the satisfaction of seeing knowledge passed from one generation to the next, as steady and reliable as the Nile's annual flood. Kamwesit moved deeper into the workshop, where other artisans worked at low wooden tables, their movements creating a gentle symphony of creation. Here, the thin strips of pith were being laid out in careful rows, each one placed parallel to its neighbor, like soldiers standing in formation before battle. But this was a peaceful battle, a victory over the blank void of nothingness, transforming humble marsh reeds into the very foundation of wisdom and knowledge. The second layer was placed perpendicular to the first, creating a cross-hatched pattern that would give the finished papyrus its strength and flexibility. Water from the sacred Nile was sprinkled over the arrangement, and then came the pressing, the gentle but firm application of weight that would bind the fibers together. The craftsmen used smooth wooden boards and carefully placed stones, applying pressure with the patience of men who understood that the finest things in life could not be rushed. As the morning progressed, Kamwesit watched the rhythmic dance of the workshop. The sound of mallets continued their steady beat, punctuated by the soft murmur of conversation between master and apprentice, teacher and student. Occasionally, someone would hum an old working song, a melody that had been passed down through generations, its words lost to time, but its rhythm perfectly suited to the cadence of their craft. The scribe found himself mesmerized by the transformation taking place before his eyes. What had been separate, individual strips of reed pith were slowly becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Under the patient pressure and the skilled attention of the craftsmen, they were merging, their fibers intertwining like the threads of fate that the gods wove for mortal men. Near the windows that faced the river, sheets of newly made papyrus hung from wooden frames, drying in the gentle breeze that carried with it the eternal breath of the Nile. They moved slightly in the air like prayers written on the wind, their surfaces already smooth enough to receive the sacred hieroglyphs that would give them meaning and purpose. The workshop was filled with a sense of quiet reverence, as if everyone present understood that they were participating in something far greater than mere craft. They were creating the vessels that would carry the words of pharaohs and priests, the records of harvests and festivals, the stories and songs that would preserve their civilization for generations yet unborn. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Kawamwesit felt a deep sense of peace settle over him like a comfortable cloak. Here, in this place of patient creation, surrounded by the gentle sounds of skilled hands at work, he could feel the eternal rhythm of Egypt itself, steady and sure as the rising of the sun. The first rays of Ra's golden chariot pierce the pre-dawn darkness as Kawamwesit makes his way down the worn stone steps to the river's edge. The air carries the cool breath of the Nile, sweet with the scent of lotus blossoms and rich mud that has nourished this land since the time of the first pharaohs. His leather satchel, containing fresh papyrus scrolls and carefully prepared reed pens, rests securely against his side. The boat awaits him, a graceful vessel woven from papyrus reeds, its curved prow rising like a swan's neck toward the lightning sky. The boatman, weathered by countless seasons on the water, nods respectfully as Kawamwesit settles onto the woven mat cushions. With a gentle push from the riverbank, they glide silently into the Nile's eternal embrace. The great river stretches before them like liquid silver, its surface barely disturbed by the morning breeze. On either side, the green ribbon of fertile land extends to meet the golden desert, creating the boundaries of the world as the gods intended. Palm trees lean gracefully over the water, their fronds whispering ancient secrets to the dawn. Kawamwesit dips his reed pen in fresh ink and begins to write, his careful hieroglyphs flowing across the papyrus like the river itself. He records the temperature of the air, the direction of the gentle wind, the color of the water, details that will serve the royal architects and engineers who plan the kingdom's great works. A splash draws his attention to the eastern bank, where a fisherman in a simple loincloth wades knee-deep into the shallows. The man moves with practiced grace, his net spreading like a spider's web before settling onto the water's surface. Other fishermen emerge from reed shelters, their voices carrying soft greetings across the water as they begin their daily ritual of harvest from the river's abundance. The scribe watches a family of ibis birds picking their way through the marshy edge, their white plumage catching the growing light. One pauses to dip its curved beak into the water, creating perfect circles that expand outward before disappearing. A kingfisher darts past, a flash of blue and orange against the pale reeds, diving suddenly to emerge with a silver fish held triumphantly in its beak. As the sun climbs higher, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, the river begins to reveal more of its morning secrets. Water buffalo emerge from the reeds to drink, their massive heads lowering reverently to the sacred waters. A crocodile slides from its basking spot on a muddy bank, disappearing beneath the surface with barely a ripple to mark its passage. The gentle rhythm of the boat's movement through the water creates a meditation all its own. Kawamwesit finds his breathing slowing to match the soft lapping of waves against the papyrus hull. He records the songs of birds awakening in the marshes, the deep call of the heron, the cheerful chatter of river swallows, the haunting cry of the sacred ibis that walks in the footsteps of Thoth himself. A small village comes into view along the western bank, its mud brick houses still cast in shadow. Smoke begins to rise from cooking fires as families prepare their morning meals. Children's voices carry across the water, bright and clear as temple bells. Women emerge to fill clay jars at the river's edge, their movements graceful and unhurried. The boatman adjusts their course slightly, following the river's natural curve between green banks lined with date palms and sycamore trees. Fish jump occasionally, their silver bodies catching the light before disappearing back into the depths. Dragonflies hover over the water, their wings creating tiny rainbows in the morning mist. Kawamwesit pauses in his writing to simply observe and absorb. The Nile flows exactly as it has for thousands of years, carrying the same life-giving waters that sustained the builders of the Great Pyramids, the same gentle current that blessed the reigns of pharaohs whose names are carved in eternal stone. He feels himself becoming part of this endless story, his small reed boat a single note in the river's ancient song. The sun has fully risen now, warming his shoulders as he continues his careful documentation. Each detail he records will become part of the eternal record, preserving this perfect morning for future generations of scribes and scholars. The sacred river carries them forward into the day, its timeless rhythm a heartbeat connecting all life along its banks. In the distance, another boat appears, its sail catching the morning breeze as it makes its way upriver toward the great temples of the south, continuing the eternal dance of life along the blessed Nile. The morning sun casts long shadows across the sacred precinct of Memphis as you, Ka'imwesit, approach the towering walls of Ptah's temple. The limestone blocks, each one perfectly fitted by master craftsmen generations ago, seem to glow with an inner warmth in the golden light. Your sandals whisper against the worn stone pathways that countless pilgrims have walked before you. The air grows thick with the scent of frankincense as you draw nearer to the temple's outer court. Palm fronds rustle softly in the gentle breeze that carries the distant sound of the Nile's eternal flow. You pause to adjust your writing palette, ensuring your reed pens are sharp and your ink cakes are moist, ready to capture the sacred mysteries you are about to witness. A priest emerges from the shadows of the massive gateway, his white linen robes pristine in the morning light. His head is shaven clean, gleaming like polished copper, and around his neck hangs an amulet of electrum shaped like the sacred ankh. He nods to you with quiet dignity, recognizing the royal carduch embroidered on your collar. Without words, he gestures for you to follow, his bare feet making no sound on the cool stone. You pass through the outer court, where artisans are already at work. The gentle tap-tap-tap of chisels on stone creates a rhythmic percussion that seems to pulse with the very heartbeat of creation. These craftsmen work in reverent silence, their movements precise and deliberate as they shape reliefs depicting the great god Ptah, he who spoke the world into existence through the power of his divine word. The priest leads you deeper into the temple complex, past pools of sacred water that reflect the painted ceiling above. Lotus blossoms float serenely on the surface, their petals opening slowly to greet the strengthening sun. The walls around you are alive with hieroglyphs that tell ancient stories of creation and divine craftsmanship, each symbol carved with loving precision by hands that understood the sacred nature of their work. As you enter the inner sanctuary, the atmosphere grows hushed and mystical. Massive columns rise like stone trees toward the painted sky of the ceiling, their capitals carved to resemble papyrus flowers in eternal bloom. The air is heavy with layers of incense, myrrh from distant Punt, frankincense from Arabia, and the sweet smoke of Kaifi that burns continuously before the god's shrine. The morning rituals have begun. You position yourself in an alcove where you can observe without disturbing the sacred proceedings. Your reed pen moves quietly across the papyrus as you document each careful gesture of the attending priests. They move like dancers in an ancient choreography, their white robes flowing like gentle waves as they approach the golden naos that houses the god's sacred image. The high priest begins the morning hymn, his voice resonating through the stone chambers with words that have been spoken here for countless generations. "Awaken, great Ptah," he intones, his voice as smooth as honey. "Lord of truth, master of justice, creator who brings all things into being." The other priests join in harmonic response, their voices weaving together like threads in a fine tapestry. You watch as they present offerings to the hidden god, fresh bread still warm from the temple ovens, beer golden as liquid amber, fruits and flowers arranged with exquisite care. Each offering is blessed with words of power, transformed from mere earthly sustenance into divine nourishment for the God who dwells in sacred mystery beyond the veil of gold and precious stones. The smoke of incense swirls around the columns, creating shifting patterns in the filtered sunlight that streams through the high windows. You document how the priests tend the eternal flame, feeding it with sacred oils that release fragrant clouds toward the painted stars above. The light dances across the hieroglyphs, bringing them to life in the sacred twilight of the inner temple. A sistrum chimes softly in the hands of a young priest, its bronze discs creating a sound like gentle rain on papyrus leaves. The rhythm is hypnotic, matching the slow pulse of the temple's spiritual heart. You find yourself writing more slowly, your movements synchronized with the peaceful cadence of the ancient ritual. As the morning ceremonies draw to a close, the priests withdraw in the same graceful silence with which they entered. The incense continues to burn, sending its prayers skyward in spirals of fragrant smoke. You remain in the alcove for a moment longer, listening to the profound quiet that settles over the sanctuary like a blessing. The god Ptah rests once more in his golden dwelling, surrounded by the love and devotion of his faithful servants. You close your palate with reverent care, knowing that you have witnessed something eternal and sacred, a glimpse into the divine order that governs all creation. The temple holds its ancient secrets close, and you have been privileged to record just a few pages of its endless, sacred story. The morning sun casts long shadows across the Giza Plateau as you, Khamwesit, make your way toward the Great Pyramids. The ancient stones seem to glow with a warm, golden light, their surfaces weathered smooth by countless years of wind and sand. Your sandals whisper against the limestone pathway as you approach a modest workshop nestled in the shadow of these eternal monuments. The rhythmic sound reaches your ears first, a gentle, measured tapping that echoes softly against the pyramid walls. Asterisk tap, 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 asterisk. The percussion is hypnotic, like a steady heartbeat carved from stone itself. As you draw closer, you see the source. 3 master stonecutters bent over their work, their bronze chisels catching the morning light as they move with practiced precision. The eldest craftsman looks up as you approach, his weathered hands still holding his tools with reverence. His eyes are kind, creased with years of squinting at intricate details, and he gestures for you to come closer. "Welcome, young scribe," he says, his voice carrying the authority of decades spent working with sacred stone. "I am Seneb, keeper of the ancient symbols." You settle onto a smooth stone bench, your reed pen and papyrus forgotten for the moment. Before you lies a workshop filled with wonder, half-finished stelae lean against the walls, their surfaces gleaming with partially carved hieroglyphs. Stone dust motes dance in the slanted sunbeams, creating an almost magical atmosphere where ancient craft meets divine purpose. Seneb returns to his work, and you watch in fascination as his chisel moves across the granite surface. Each strike is deliberate, purposeful, adding definition to what will become the sacred eye of Horus. Every symbol carries the breath of the gods, he explains, his voice barely above a whisper. When we carve these hieroglyphs, we are not merely cutting stone. We are creating vessels for eternal truth. The sound of the workshop creates a soothing symphony. Asterisk tap, tap, tap. Asterisk 3 chisels working in gentle harmony, occasionally joined by the soft scraping of bronze tools smoothing rough edges. The rhythm is meditative, almost like a prayer spoken in stone. You feel your breathing slow to match the cadence of their work. A younger craftsman nearby is carving the graceful curves of a sacred ibis, the bird of Thoth, god of wisdom and writing. His movements are fluid, confident, each tap of his chisel revealing more of the divine creature hidden within the stone. The ibis teaches us patience, Seneb observes, watching his apprentice work. See how each feather must be carved with care. Rush the work, and the god's essence is lost. You notice how the stone dust settles in gentle patterns around each workstation, creating small dunes that shift and reform with every movement. The air smells of heated metal and ancient limestone, a scent that seems to connect you to generations of craftsmen who have worked in this very spot, under the watchful gaze of the pyramids. Seneb sets down his chisel and runs his fingers over the carved surface, feeling for imperfections only his trained touch can detect. The stone speaks to us, he says, his voice filled with quiet reverence. It tells us where to cut, where to smooth, where to polish. We are merely its servants, helping it reveal the divine messages it was meant to carry. The workshop grows quieter as the sun climbs higher, its rays now filtering through small openings in the reed roof, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the work surfaces. The asterisk tap, tap, tap asterisk continues, steady and reassuring, a sound that has echoed across the centuries in workshops just like this one. An apprentice brings cool water in clay vessels, and the craftsmen pause their work to drink. The silence is comfortable, filled with the shared understanding that comes from dedication to sacred craft. You watch as Seneb traces a completed hieroglyph with his finger, his eyes distant as if reading messages from the gods themselves. These symbols will outlast us all, he says finally, his voice carrying a note of profound peace. Long after our bodies return to the earth, these stones will carry our prayers, our stories, our hopes for the eternal journey. In every carefully carved line, we place a piece of our souls. As the morning progresses, you find yourself mesmerized by the gentle rhythm of creation. The stone cutters work with the patience of eternity itself, each tap of their chisels adding to a legacy that will endure for thousands of years. The sound becomes part of your heartbeat, part of your breath, a meditation in stone that connects you to the divine purpose that flows through all sacred work. The pyramids stand silent witness above, their own stones carved by craftsmen just like these, their eternal presence a testament to the power of patient, reverent hands guided by devotion to the gods and pharaohs they serve. The sun hangs low in the western sky as Kharamweset makes his way up the gentle slope of the Giza Plateau, his sandaled feet finding purchase on the worn limestone path. The day's heat is beginning to fade, replaced by the softer warmth that comes with evening's approach. His leather satchel, heavy with papyrus scrolls and reed pens, bounces gently against his side with each measured step. As he climbs higher, the Great Pyramid of Khufu emerges fully into view, its massive limestone blocks catching the golden light of the setting sun. The structure rises before him like a mountain crafted by human hands, each stone placed with precision that speaks of divine inspiration. Kharamweset pauses to catch his breath, his eyes tracing the perfect angles that have stood unchanged for over 1,000 years. The plateau spreads out around him, dotted with smaller mastaba tombs and the shadowy entrances to underground burial chambers. Workers from the nearby village are making their way home, their voices carrying on the evening breeze as they call to one another across the ancient necropolis. The sound of their laughter mingles with the distant bleating of goats and the soft whisper of wind through the desert grass. Kharamweset finds a smooth boulder near the edge of the plateau and settles himself upon it, arranging his robes carefully around his legs. From this vantage point, he can see the three great pyramids standing in perfect alignment, their shadows growing longer as Ra's golden chariot continues its journey toward the western horizon. The Nile glimmers in the distance like a ribbon of liquid silver, its waters reflecting the deepening colors of the sky. He reaches into his satchel and withdraws a fresh sheet of papyrus, smoothing it across his lap with practiced hands. His reed pen moves slowly across the surface as he begins to record his thoughts, the hieroglyphs flowing in neat columns from right to left. On this evening, he writes, "As the sun sets behind the eternal monuments of our ancestors, I am struck by the wisdom of those who came before." The air grows cooler as the sun sinks lower, and Kharamweset pulls his linen cloak more closely around his shoulders. A hawk circles overhead, its cry echoing off the stone faces of the pyramids before it glides away toward the river. The scribe watches its flight path, noting how even the birds seem to respect the sacred geometry of this place. These pyramids, he continues writing, stand as testament to the human desire to touch eternity. Each block was placed not merely to create shelter for the dead, but to create something that would endure beyond memory, beyond the lives of children's children's children. His pen pauses as he searches for the right words to capture the feeling that wells up within him. The sun touches the horizon now, painting the sky in shades of copper and rose. The limestone faces of the pyramids glow with warm light, and for a moment, Khaemwesit imagines he can see the polished casing stones that once covered these monuments, reflecting the sunset like mirrors of the gods. The desert stretches endlessly beyond, its rolling dunes touched with purple shadows. A gentle breeze stirs the palm fronds of a distant oasis, and somewhere in the gathering dusk, a night bird begins its evening song. Khaemwesit sets down his pen and simply watches as the colors deepen overhead. Stars begin to appear one by one, the same stars that guided the ancient builders as they aligned these monuments with celestial precision. I am but one voice in a chorus that spans generations, he writes as darkness settles around him. My words will join the countless others who have stood in this place and marveled at what mortal hands can achieve when guided by divine purpose. The pyramids teach us that some things are meant to last forever, while we ourselves are merely visitors passing through this sacred landscape. The moon rises full and bright, casting silver light across the plateau and transforming the pyramids into mysterious sentinels against the star-filled sky. Khaemwesit carefully rolls his papyrus and returns it to his satchel, knowing that tomorrow's scribes will add their own observations to this eternal record. As he makes his way back down the plateau, the ancient stones seem to whisper their secrets to the desert wind, and Khaemwesit carries with him the peaceful certainty that some mysteries are meant to be contemplated rather than solved, treasured rather than conquered. The Giza Plateau settles into its nightly vigil, watching over the Nile Valley as it has for countless centuries, as it will for countless more to come. The morning sun casts long golden fingers across the water as your boat approaches a small village nestled along a gentle bend in the Nile. The sound of rhythmic hammering drifts across the water, mixed with voices calling to one another in peaceful coordination. This is the village of the boat builders, where generations have perfected the ancient art of crafting vessels from the sacred papyrus reeds that grow in abundance along these blessed waters. As Khaemwesit guides the boat toward shore, you can see families already at work in the early light. Children sit cross-legged beside their parents, their small fingers learning to weave the green stalks into tight, waterproof bundles. The youngest ones watch with wide eyes, absorbing every movement, every technique that has been passed down through countless generations. An elderly woman with silver hair braided with blue beads looks up from her work and waves. Her weathered hands never stop moving as she demonstrates to a young girl how to select the strongest reeds, how to feel for the perfect flexibility that will make a boat both swift and safe upon the water. The girl nods solemnly, understanding that she holds in her hands not just plant material, but the very foundation of her family's livelihood and tradition. You step onto the sandy shore, and the soft earth feels warm beneath your sandals. The air is filled with the green scent of fresh papyrus, mixed with the gentle aroma of the river and the faint smoke from cooking fires where morning bread is being prepared. Somewhere nearby, a baby coos contentedly in a reed basket while its mother works, her hands moving in the same ancient patterns her grandmother's hands once traced. A master boat builder approaches, his face creased with smile lines from years of working in the sun. His name is Amenemheb, and his family has been crafting these vessels for 7 generations. He gestures proudly toward a nearly completed boat, its hull gleaming golden in the morning light. The papyrus has been bound so tightly, so skillfully, that it appears almost like a single living thing rather than thousands of individual reeds woven together. Each boat has its own spirit, Amenemheb explains, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of true mastery. We do not simply build them, we help them come into being. He shows you how the reeds are selected at just the right time when the sap runs strongest, how they are dried to the perfect moisture content, neither too brittle nor too flexible. 3 generations work side by side on the boat before you. Grandfather's hands, gnarled but sure, guide the binding of the prow. Father shapes the graceful curve of the hull with practiced efficiency, and a boy of perhaps 10 summers learns by watching, occasionally allowed to hold a bundle of reeds or pass a tool, his eyes bright with the desire to one day create such beautiful vessels himself. The women of the village have their own vital role in this ancient craft. They prepare the binding cords from palm fiber, their fingers working with meditative precision as they twist and strengthen each strand. A group of them sits in the shade of an old sycamore tree, talking quietly as they work, their voices creating a gentle harmony that blends with the sounds of construction and the soft lapping of the Nile against the shore. Children dart between the work areas, carrying messages and small tools, learning through participation rather than formal instruction. A little girl of perhaps 6 carefully carries a bundle of prepared reeds to her uncle, her face serious with the importance of her task. When she successfully delivers her burden, her family's approving smiles light up her world. As the morning progresses, you watch a beautiful rhythm emerge in the village's work. No one hurries, yet everything moves forward with steady, purposeful progress. Conversations flow as naturally as the river itself. Discussions of reed quality, weather patterns, which boats will be ready for the upcoming harvest festival, whose daughter has shown particular skill with the binding techniques. An old storyteller sits with the smallest children, his voice weaving tales of the first boat builders, of how the god Thoth taught humans to work with papyrus, of boats that carried pharaohs and common folk alike safely across the waters of life and death. The children listen with rapt attention, absorbing not just stories but the deeper wisdom of their people. The sun climbs higher, and the village settles into its timeless rhythm. Here, along this sacred river, families work together as they have for countless generations, their hands creating vessels that will carry dreams, trade goods, and travelers like yourself safely along the eternal waters of the Nile. In this moment, surrounded by the gentle sounds of ancient craft and loving community, time itself seems to flow as peacefully as the great river beside you. The morning sun rises slowly over the fertile banks of the sacred Nile, casting long golden shadows across endless fields of grain. You are Kamwesit, royal scribe to the great Pharaoh, and today your reed pen will capture the quiet miracle of harvest time. The air is warm and still, carrying the sweet scent of ripened wheat and barley that stretches as far as the eye can see. You walk carefully along the raised pathways between the fields, your leather sandals making soft sounds against the packed earth. In your hands, you carry your scribe's palette, smooth wood worn smooth by countless days of use, with small wells for black and red ink made from charcoal and ochre. Your reed pens are freshly cut and prepared, ready to record the bounty that the gods have blessed Egypt with this season. The farmers are already at work, moving slowly and methodically through the golden grain. Their bronze sickles catch the early light as they cut the stalks with practiced, rhythmic motions. Swish, swish, swish. The sound is hypnotic and peaceful, like a gentle heartbeat of the land itself. Children follow behind their parents, gathering the cut grain into neat bundles, their laughter mixing with the soft rustle of wheat in the morning breeze. You pause beside a field where an elderly farmer works alongside his sons. His weathered hands move with the wisdom of many harvests, and you watch as he selects only the finest stalks. There is no hurry here, no urgency, only the ancient dance between human hands and the gifts of the earth. You dip your reed pen in the black ink and begin to write on your papyrus, recording the careful measurements of each plot, the quality of the grain, the names of the families who tend these sacred fields. The morning air grows warmer as the sun climbs higher, and you move to the shade of a date palm to continue your work. From here, you can see the entire harvest spread before you like a living tapestry. Women carry large wicker baskets on their heads, filled with golden grain that will feed the great cities of Egypt. Their movements are graceful and unhurried, each step a prayer of gratitude to Renenutet, goddess of the harvest. Near the river's edge, other scribes like yourself work quietly at wooden tables, weighing and measuring the grain as it arrives from the fields. The soft scritch-scratch of reed pens on papyrus mingles with the gentle lapping of the Nile against the muddy banks. Ibis birds wade in the shallows, their white feathers pristine against the dark water, occasionally pausing to watch the human activity with curious, intelligent eyes. You record not just numbers, but the stories within the numbers. How this field produced more wheat than last year thanks to the perfect flood season. How that family's barley grew tall and strong despite the challenges of drought earlier in the year. Each entry in your careful hieroglyphs tells the story of Egypt's abundance, a testament to the wisdom of the Pharaoh and the blessing of the gods. As the day progresses, you move through the fields like a quiet observer of this peaceful ritual. Donkeys wait patiently beside loaded carts, their ears twitching at flies, while their handlers rest in whatever shade they can find. The rhythm of harvest continues unchanged, cutting, gathering, loading, measuring, each motion part of a ceremony as old as Egypt itself. The river reflects the blue sky like polished silver, and you pause in your writing to watch a felucca sail slowly past, its triangular sail filled with the gentle afternoon breeze. The boat sits low in the water, heavy with grain bound for the royal granaries in Memphis. The sailor raises his hand in a peaceful greeting, and you nod in return, both of you servants of the great kingdom that the Nile sustains. As evening approaches, you make your final notes of the day. The golden light grows softer, painting the grain fields in warm amber hues. Families begin to gather their tools, their work done for today. Children run between the stubbled rows, playing games as old as time, while their parents secure the last of the day's harvest. You roll your papyrus carefully and secure it with a cord, knowing that tomorrow you will present these records to the overseer of granaries. But for now, you simply sit in the gathering dusk, listening to the gentle sounds of the river, the distant call of night birds, and the soft conversations of farmers heading home. The harvest continues, as it has for countless generations, and as it will for countless more, a peaceful cycle of abundance along the sacred waters of the eternal Nile. The morning sun casts long shadows across the temple courtyard as you follow Khaimwesit toward a modest building nestled between towering palm trees. The structure before you is known as the House of Life, though its weathered limestone walls and simple wooden doors might seem unremarkable to an untrained eye. Yet within these walls lies one of Egypt's greatest treasures, the accumulated wisdom of generations, carefully preserved and gently shared. Khaimwesit pauses at the threshold, his writing palette balanced carefully in his hands. The soft rustle of papyrus scrolls drifts from within, accompanied by the gentle murmur of voices engaged in quiet discussion. A scholar priest emerges, his white linen robes pristine despite the early hour, a warm smile creasing his weathered face. His name is Amenhotep, and he has spent 40 years within these walls, learning and teaching in equal measure. "Welcome, scribe of the royal court," Amenhotep says, his voice carrying the measured cadence of one accustomed to instruction. "Come, witness how knowledge flows like the sacred Nile itself, steady, nourishing, eternal." You follow them through corridors lined with niches containing countless scrolls. The air is cool and dry, carefully maintained to preserve the precious papyrus within. Shafts of golden sunlight filter through high windows, illuminating motes of dust that dance like tiny spirits in the amber light. The stone floors, worn smooth by countless footsteps, tell stories of seekers who have walked these paths before. In the first chamber, young acolytes sit in a perfect circle around an elderly priest-physician. His voice is barely above a whisper as he demonstrates the preparation of healing salves, his gnarled fingers working with surprising dexterity among small clay pots and dried herbs. The sweet scent of frankincense mingles with the earthy aroma of ground lotus root and the sharp bite of crushed garlic. Observe how medicine is taught not through harsh commands but gentle demonstration, Amenhotep explains to Khaimwesit. Each student learns at their own pace, like seeds that sprout when the soil and season are ready. The lesson continues with unhurried grace. The physician priest allows each student to smell, touch, and examine every ingredient. When one young man struggles to identify a particular herb, His teacher simply places it in the student's palm and guides his fingers over its distinctive ridged leaves, speaking softly of its properties and where it grows along the riverbank. Moving deeper into the House of Life, you enter a chamber devoted to the study of the heavens. Here, the walls are covered with intricate charts mapping the movement of stars and planets. A middle-aged priest astronomer traces the path of constellations with a wooden pointer, his students following the graceful arc with rapt attention. See how Ra travels across the celestial waters, the teacher says, his voice filled with quiet wonder despite having spoken these words thousands of times. Each night he journeys through the underworld, emerging reborn each dawn. In understanding his path, we understand the rhythm of all life. The students ask questions freely, their curiosity welcomed rather than discouraged. When a young woman inquires about the mathematics of predicting floods, the astronomer settles onto a cushion beside her, sketching calculations in the sand with patient precision. His teaching flows like honey from the comb's sweet, unhurried, nourishing. Ka'emwesit's reed pen moves steadily across his papyrus, capturing not just the words but the atmosphere of gentle learning that permeates every corner of this sacred space. He notes how knowledge here is treated not as a treasure to be hoarded, but as a river to be channeled, shared, and celebrated. In a quiet alcove, you discover an ancient priest working alone, carefully copying a medical text that has grown too fragile for regular use. His movements are meditation in motion, each hieroglyph formed with reverent precision, each line a prayer offered to the gods of wisdom. The scratch of his reed against papyrus creates a rhythm as soothing as distant temple chimes. This is how we ensure knowledge survives, Amenhotep whispers to Ka'emwesit, not through force or decree, but through love and dedication. Each copied text is a bridge between past and future, carrying wisdom across the flood of time. As the morning progresses, you witness mathematics lessons conducted through practical problems calculating grain storage, measuring field boundaries, determining the proper proportions for temple construction. Every lesson connects to daily life, making abstract concepts as tangible as the mud bricks beneath their feet. The House of Life reveals itself to be more than a school, it is a living temple to human understanding, where wisdom grows in the fertile soil of patience and respect. Here, in this peaceful sanctuary beside the eternal Nile, knowledge flows as gently and inevitably as the great river itself, nourishing all who come to drink from its abundant waters. Ka'emwesit closes his eyes for a moment, allowing the profound tranquility of this place to settle into his bones, knowing that some treasures cannot be captured in words alone. The evening air carries a coolness that whispers of distant desert winds, and Ka'emwesit sets down his reed pen as twilight begins to paint the sky in shades of deep amber and rose. The royal barge rocks gently at anchor, tethered near a cluster of palm trees whose fronds rustle like papyrus in the breeze. Across the darkening waters of the Nile, lanterns begin to flicker to life on the other vessels that have also chosen this peaceful bend in the river for their evening rest. As the last traces of sunlight fade from the western horizon, Ka'emwesit moves to the bow of the barge, where cushions have been arranged for the evening watch. The water laps softly against the hull with a rhythm as old as the river itself, and he finds himself listening to this ancient song that has lulled countless generations to sleep along these sacred banks. Then, carried on the gentle evening breeze, comes another sound, the first tentative notes of a lute being tuned. Somewhere across the water, musicians are preparing for their evening performance. Ka'emwesit turns his attention toward the sound, his scribe's ears attuned to capturing every nuance of this moment. A small merchant vessel floats perhaps 50 cubits away, its deck illuminated by the warm glow of oil lamps. Shadows move gracefully in the golden light, and soon the tentative tuning gives way to the first flowing melody. The lute's voice rises clear and sweet across the water, its notes seeming to dance with the gentle current of the Nile. Other instruments join the river symphony, the hollow, breathy tones of a wooden flute that seems to echo the wind itself, and the soft percussion of a small drum that matches the rhythm of the water against the boats. The musicians, though distant, play with the skill of those who have spent their lives traveling these waters, sharing their gift with fellow travelers under the vast Egyptian sky. Khaimwesit closes his eyes and lets the music wash over him like the river's own embrace. The melody speaks of journeys and homecomings, of the eternal flow of the Nile that connects the great temples of Thebes to the delta marshes where the river meets the sea. Each note seems to carry with it the stories of all who have traveled these waters, merchants and nobles, farmers and priests, all united by the sacred river that gives life to the land. The flute takes the lead now, its voice soaring and dipping like the flight of an ibis over the water. The melody is both ancient and timeless, echoing the traditional songs that have been passed down through generations of Nile travelers. Yet there is something fresh and spontaneous in the performance, as if the musicians are creating something new while honoring the old ways. On other boats scattered across this peaceful stretch of river, Khaimwesit can see figures gathering to listen. Children lean against their parents' knees, while mothers hum along with melodies they recognize. Sailors pause in their evening tasks to appreciate the gift of music freely given to all who share this moment on the water. The scribe thinks about how music, like the river itself, knows no boundaries of class or station. The same melody that brings joy to a pharaoh in his palace can touch the heart of a fisherman mending his nets. Tonight, under the emerging stars, all who float upon the Nile are united in this shared experience of beauty. As the performance continues, Khaimwesit finds himself reaching for his writing materials. This moment must be captured, preserved for future generations who might read his chronicles and wonder what it was like to travel these waters in this golden age. His pen moves smoothly across the papyrus, recording not just the facts of their journey but the essence of this peaceful evening. The music shifts to a slower, more meditative rhythm, and Khaimwesit recognizes a traditional river blessing, a song meant to ensure safe passage and peaceful dreams. The musicians' voices join the instruments now, their words in praise of the Nile's eternal generosity, their harmony floating across the water like incense rising to the gods. Stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, their reflection shimmering on the river's surface like scattered jewels. The music continues, each song flowing into the next as naturally as the Nile flows toward the sea. Khaimwesit feels a deep contentment settle over him, knowing that he is witnessing something timeless and perfect. As the final notes fade into the gentle sounds of the night, the lapping of water, the rustle of reeds, the distant call of a night bird, Khaimwesit sets aside his writing and simply listens to the river's eternal song. Tomorrow will bring new wonders to record, but tonight belongs to music, to peace, and to the sacred waters that carry them all safely through the darkness toward the dawn. The morning sun casts long shadows across the riverbank as Khaimwesit approaches the pottery village, his sandals whispering against the packed earth. The gentle lapping of the Nile mingles with a sound he has grown to love, the soft, rhythmic hum of spinning wheels turning clay into vessels of countless shapes and purposes. Here, in this quiet settlement where the river bends like a crescent moon, generations of potters have worked the sacred mud of Egypt, transforming the Nile's gifts into objects of both beauty and necessity. The scribe pauses at the village edge, breathing in the earthy scent of wet clay mixed with the sweet fragrance of lotus blossoms drifting from the water. The first workshop he enters belongs to an elderly potter named Seneb, whose hands move with the fluid grace of someone who has shaped clay for 40 seasons. The wheel spins slowly, hypnotically, as Seneb's weathered fingers guide a lump of river clay upward, coaxing it into the form of a water jar. The motion is so smooth, so perfectly controlled, that Khaimwesit finds himself breathing in rhythm with the wheel's gentle rotation. "Watch the clay," Seneb murmurs without lifting his eyes from his work. "It tells you what it wants to become." His voice is soft, contemplative, matching the meditative quality of his craft. The jar grows taller under his touch, its walls evening out with each pass of his palms. Water drips from his fingertips, keeping the clay supple and responsive. Khaemwesit settles onto a low stool, his reed pen moving across papyrus as he captures not just the techniques he observes, but the profound sense of peace that permeates this place. The scratching of his writing blends with the soft splash of water, the whisper of clay against skin, and the steady turn of the wheel. In the next workshop, a younger potter named Nebit works on smaller vessels, oil lamps with perfectly formed spouts, cosmetic jars with delicate rims, and offering bowls that will grace temple altars. Her movements are quick and sure, each piece emerging from the wheel like a flower blooming in fast motion. Yet even in her efficiency, there is no hurry, no stress. Each vessel receives her full attention before being set aside to dry in the warm air. The afternoon light filters through reed screens, casting dancing patterns on the workshop walls as Khaemwesit documents the different types of clay the potters use. The finest, smoothest clay comes from the riverbank during the flooding season, when the Nile deposits its richest sediments. This clay becomes the elegant vessels used in wealthy households and sacred ceremonies. Coarser clay, mixed with sand and chopped straw, forms the sturdy jars that store grain and oil in common homes. He watches a master potter demonstrate the creation of canopic jars, those sacred vessels that will one day hold the preserved organs of the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. The potter's reverence is evident in every careful movement, his understanding that he crafts not merely containers, but guardians of immortality. The 4 jars emerge identical in size, but distinct in their stoppers. Human-headed Seti, baboon-faced Hapi, jackal-headed Duamutef, and falcon-headed Kebesenuf. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, Khaemwesit joins the potters for their evening meal. They sit in a circle beside the river, sharing flatbread and dried fish while their day's work slowly hardens in the fading light. The conversation flows as gently as the Nile itself, tales of exceptional pieces that emerged unexpectedly from the clay, discussions of glazes that shimmer like jewels, and quiet pride in vessels that will serve families for generations. The eldest potter speaks of clay as a living thing, responsive to the weather, to the potter's mood, to the very rhythms of the earth itself. During the flood season, when the Nile rises and the clay is richest, the pottery seems to form itself, eager to take shape. In the dry months, the clay becomes more stubborn, requiring patience and gentle coaxing. As darkness settles over the village, oil lamps flicker to life, many of them crafted by these same hands. The warm glow illuminates faces marked by contentment, by the deep satisfaction that comes from a day spent in meaningful work. Khaemwesit feels this contentment seeping into his own spirit as he records his final observations by lamplight. The river murmurs its ancient songs beyond the workshop walls, carrying with it the prayers and hopes of countless generations. Here among the pottery makers, where earth and water unite under patient hands to create objects of lasting beauty, Khaemwesit discovers yet another facet of Egyptian wisdom, the understanding that true artistry lies not in rushing toward completion, but in honoring the natural rhythm of creation itself. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the sacred waters as your boat glides silently toward Crocodilopolis, the ancient city dedicated to Sobek, the crocodile god. The gentle lapping of the Nile against the hull mingles with the distant sound of temple bells, carried on the warm desert breeze. You are Khaemwesit, royal scribe, and today you witness something few outsiders have ever seen. The temple complex rises before you like a dream carved from golden sandstone, its walls adorned with hieroglyphs that seem to shimmer in the dancing light. Priests in white linen robes move with quiet purpose along the waterfront, their movements as measured and graceful as the river's own rhythm. The air carries the scent of burning myrrh and the earthy richness of the Nile's mud banks. Your guide, an elderly priest named Amenhotep, greets you with a gentle bow. His eyes hold the wisdom of decades spent in service to the god of the river's power. Come, he whispers, his voice soft as papyrus rustling in the wind. The sacred ones await. You follow him through corridors lined with magnificent murals depicting Sobek in all his glory, part man, part crocodile, protector of the Pharaoh and guardian of the Nile's bounty. The stone beneath your sandaled feet is worn smooth by countless pilgrims who have walked this path before you. Cool air flows through the passageways, offering blessed relief from the day's heat. The sacred pool emerges gradually from the temple's depths, a perfect rectangle of crystalline water fed directly by the holy Nile. Lotus blossoms float serenely on its surface, their white petals catching fragments of sunlight that filter through the clerestory windows above. And there, in the center of this aquatic sanctuary, lie the sacred crocodiles. They rest with ancient patience, these living embodiments of divine power. Their scales catch the light like polished bronze, and their eyes those timeless, knowing eyes seem to hold all the secrets of the river within their golden depths. Some bask on low stone platforms specially carved for their comfort, while others drift lazily through the warm water, creating gentle ripples that spread in perfect circles. "Behold the children of Sobek," Amenhotep murmurs, his voice filled with reverence. "Each has been blessed by the god himself, chosen from birth to serve as his earthly representatives." You watch in fascination as younger priests approach the pool's edge, carrying offerings of fresh fish and choice cuts of meat. There is no fear in their movements, only deep respect and understanding. The crocodiles respond with remarkable gentleness, accepting their meals with a dignity that speaks of their sacred status. One particularly magnificent specimen, adorned with gold bands around his massive jaws, allows a priest to stroke his armored hide. "This is Nehib Kau," the elder priest explains softly, guardian of this temple for 30 years. "He knows each of us, recognizes our voices, and has never shown aggression to those who serve the god faithfully." The ritual feeding continues in peaceful silence, broken only by the soft splash of water and the gentle murmur of prayers. You notice how the priests move with choreographed precision, each understanding their role in maintaining the harmony of this sacred space. Incense burns in bronze braziers around the pool's perimeter, sending spirals of fragrant smoke toward the painted ceiling where stars and constellations map out the eternal journey of the gods. As you prepare your writing materials, a profound sense of tranquility settles over the chamber. The crocodiles seem to sense the sacred nature of your task, remaining still as living sculptures while you record their measurements, their markings, the careful rituals that govern their care. Your reed pen moves smoothly across the papyrus, capturing not just facts, but the essence of this extraordinary place where the boundary between divine and earthly dissolves. The late afternoon light grows softer, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. The sacred crocodiles begin their evening rest, some slipping silently into the deeper parts of the pool while others settle onto their warming stones. The priests continue their gentle ministrations, checking water levels, adjusting the lotus arrangements, ensuring perfect harmony in every detail. The god speaks through them, Amenhotep tells you as the day draws toward its close. In their patience we learn wisdom. In their power held in check, we understand divine mercy. They are teachers as much as they are guardians. As you gather your completed writings, you feel the weight of the day's revelations. Here in this sacred space, where humans and crocodiles coexist in perfect balance, you have witnessed something timeless, a demonstration of respect for the natural world that transcends fear and embraces understanding. The temple bells ring softly as evening approaches, and the sacred crocodiles of Sobek settle into their ancient dreams, guardians of mysteries as deep and enduring as the Nile itself. The gentle lapping of water against the reed boat mingles with the soft rhythm of distant looms as Khaimwesit approaches the weaving center. The morning sun casts long shadows across the muddy banks of the Nile, and the air carries the sweet scent of flax fibers and the earthy smell of the river. Here, where the sacred waters have deposited rich silt for countless seasons, the finest linen in all of Egypt is born from patient hands and ancient wisdom. Stepping onto the wooden dock, Khaimwesit adjusts his papyrus scroll and reed pen, already anticipating the peaceful sounds that await him. The weaving center stretches before him like a village unto itself, Low, flat-roofed buildings arranged around courtyards where workers move with the unhurried grace of those who have mastered their craft over many years. Palm fronds rustle overhead, providing welcome shade from the strengthening sun. The first sound that greets him is the gentle percussion of wooden shuttles passing through taut threads, a rhythm as steady and comforting as a mother's heartbeat. Click-thock, the sound echoes from dozens of looms, creating a symphony of productivity that somehow manages to be deeply soothing. Kaimwesit pauses at the entrance of the first workshop, watching as sunlight filters through high windows, illuminating motes of flax dust that dance lazily in the warm air. Inside, rows of women sit at their looms, their movements fluid and practiced. Their fingers work the threads with an almost meditative precision, each pass of the shuttle bringing the linen closer to completion. The flax has already undergone its transformation, from the tall green stalks that once swayed in riverside fields, through the careful process of retting in the Nile's gentle currents, to the fine fibers that now await their final metamorphosis into cloth. An older woman, her hair silver beneath a simple linen head covering, notices Kaimwesit's quiet observation. She smiles warmly, her hands never pausing in their work. "Welcome, young scribe," she says, her voice soft as the whisper of thread through heddles. "Come, see how the gift of the gods becomes clothing fit for pharaohs and commoners alike." Kaimwesit approaches her loom, marveling at the intricate pattern emerging beneath her skilled hands. The warp threads stretch taut and true, while the weft creates subtle variations in texture that will make this piece particularly fine. "The flax remembers the water," she explains, her shuttle continuing its rhythmic dance. "Just as the Nile gives life to our land, so it gives strength to our thread." Around the workshop, other voices join in quiet conversation, mothers sharing stories of their children, weavers discussing the quality of this season's flax harvest, gentle laughter at a shared memory. The sounds blend harmoniously with the percussion of the looms, creating an atmosphere of contentment and shared purpose. No voice is raised in anger or haste. Time here moves at the pace of careful craftsmanship. Kaimwesit dips his reed pen in ink, capturing not just the techniques he observes but the profound peace of this place. He writes of how linen serves not only the living but accompanies the dead in their journey to the afterlife, wrapped around their mortal forms with the same care these women show their daily work. Every thread carries with it the blessing of the Nile, the patience of human hands, and the continuity of tradition stretching back to the earliest dynasties. A young girl, perhaps 10 summers old, sits beside her mother at a smaller loom, learning the ancient patterns with the focused attention of youth. Her small fingers move slowly but surely, guided by gentle words and patient corrections. The scene reminds Kaimwesit of his own early days with reed and papyrus, when each hieroglyph seemed impossibly complex, yet gradually yielded to practice and determination. As the morning progresses, the workshop fills with the warm scent of bread from a nearby bakery, mingling with the clean smell of fresh linen and the green aroma of the Nile that seems to permeate everything in this blessed land. The weavers pause briefly to share their meal, their conversation turning to the upcoming flood season and the promise it holds for next year's flax crop. The sun climbs higher, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow through the workshop windows. The steady rhythm of the looms continues, unchanged by the passage of time, a heartbeat of industry that has echoed along the Nile for generations uncounted. In this peaceful place, where thread becomes cloth and craft becomes art, Kaimwesit finds himself understanding something fundamental about the enduring strength of his civilization, built not on grand gestures alone, but on the quiet dedication of skilled hands working in harmony with the eternal rhythms of river and season. The morning sun cast long golden rays across the temple courtyards as Kaimwesit arrived at Thebes during the most sacred of celebrations. The air hummed with anticipation, thick with the sweet smoke of frankincense and myrrh that drifted from countless braziers positioned throughout the sacred precinct. Palm fronds rustled gently in the warm breeze, their whispered movements barely audible above the distant sound of sistrum rattles and ceremonial drums. Today was the festival of Apit, when the god Amun-Ra would journey from his home at Karnak to visit his beloved Luxor temple. Khammam had traveled many days to witness this most holy of processions, his scribe's satchel heavy with fresh papyrus and carefully prepared ink. As royal chronicler, it was his sacred duty to preserve every detail of this ancient ritual for future generations. The young scribe found his position among the gathered crowd, settling cross-legged on a woven reed mat he had brought for the occasion. Around him, families shared dates and honeyed bread, their children wide-eyed with wonder as they watched the priests prepare for the ceremony. Elderly grandmothers told stories in hushed, reverent tones, their weathered hands gesturing toward the temple doors that would soon open to reveal the sacred bark. From within the temple complex came the deep, resonant sound of the sacred horns, their bronze voices calling across the centuries-old stones. Khammam felt the vibrations in his chest as the sound rolled over the assembled crowd like gentle thunder. He dipped his reed brush in ink and began to write, his practiced hand moving smoothly across the papyrus surface. The great doors of Karnak temple slowly opened, and the first of the white-robed priests emerged into the golden sunlight. They moved with measured steps, their feet bare against the warm stone, each movement choreographed by tradition stretching back through countless generations. The crowd fell silent, a reverent hush settling over the thousands gathered to witness this sacred moment. Behind the first priests came the censers, swinging gently on golden chains, releasing clouds of aromatic smoke that rose toward the azure sky like prayers made visible. The sweet scent of sacred resins filled the air, mixing with the natural fragrances of lotus blossoms and acacia flowers that adorned every doorway and window along the processional route. Then came the sacred bark itself, carried on the shoulders of 20 chosen priests. The gilded vessel gleamed in the morning light, its intricate carvings telling the eternal stories of creation and divine protection. Precious stones caught in scattered sunlight like captured stars, while colorful streamers of finest linen fluttered gently in the warm breeze. Khammam watched in quiet awe as the procession moved past his position. The carriers moved in perfect harmony, their steps synchronized by years of practice and devotion. Not a single drop of the sacred oils within the bark was disturbed, such was their skill and reverence. The scribe's brush moved quickly but carefully, capturing every detail of the ornate decorations, the precise formations of the priests, the joyful faces of the celebrating people. As the procession wound through the streets toward Luxor Temple, the entire city seemed to pulse with gentle celebration. Flower petals drifted down from rooftops like colorful rain, tossed by children and elders alike. Musicians played soft melodies on wooden flutes and gentle harps, their music weaving through the air like golden thread connecting earth to heaven. The journey continued at its measured pace, unhurried and serene. Vendors offered cool barley water to the priests, while families shared their festival foods with neighbors and strangers alike. This was more than a religious ceremony, it was a celebration of community, of the bonds that connected all people along the blessed Nile. Khammam found himself swept along with the gentle tide of celebrants, his writing tablet balanced carefully in his hands as he continued to record the day's events. He noted how the youngest children fell silent in wonder as the sacred bark passed, how elderly priests nodded in approval at the reverent behavior of the crowd, how even the temple cats seemed to understand the solemnity of the occasion. As the procession neared its destination at Luxor Temple, the afternoon sun began its slow descent toward the western horizon. The light took on that special quality of late day, golden and warm, painting everything it touched with a gentle glow. The crowd gathered in the great courtyard, still maintaining their respectful quiet as the sacred bark was carried into the inner sanctuary. With the ceremony complete, Khammam carefully rolled his papyrus and secured it in his leather satchel. Around him, families began their quiet journey home, their faces peaceful and content. The young scribe smiled to himself, knowing that he had successfully preserved this beautiful moment of faith and community for all time. The sacred Nile flowed on beside them, eternal and blessing, carrying their prayers toward tomorrow's dawn. The morning sun filters through the towering date palms as Khaimwesit follows a winding stone path deeper into the temple complex. The air here carries a different quality, sweeter, more fragrant, as if blessed by the gods themselves. Ahead, limestone walls give way to an opening where light dances through leaves, and the sound of gently flowing water beckons him forward. As he steps through the archway, Khaimwesit finds himself in a garden unlike any he has ever seen. Neat rows of green stretch before him, each plant carefully tended and purposefully placed. The scent of mint mingles with the earthy smell of rich soil, while somewhere nearby, the gentle splash of water against clay vessels creates a rhythmic, soothing sound. An elderly man kneels beside a patch of low-growing herbs, his weathered hands moving with practiced care as he examines each leaf. His linen tunic is simple but clean, and around his neck hangs an amulet of Thoth, the god of wisdom and healing. This must be Amenemheb, the temple physician whose reputation has spread throughout the kingdom. "Peace be upon you, young scribe," the physician says without looking up, his voice carrying the calm authority of one who has spent decades in service to others. "The plants told me you were coming." Khaimwesit approaches slowly, not wanting to disturb the sacred work taking place. "Master Amenemheb, I am honored to find you here. Your gardens are spoken of with reverence throughout the temples." The older man's eyes crinkle with gentle humor as he finally looks up. "The gardens do the work, young one. I merely listen to what they have to teach." He gestures to the plant before him, a sturdy herb with serrated leaves that catch the morning light. "This is called nettle. To some, it seems like a weed that stings the unwary, but when prepared correctly, it strengthens the blood and eases the pain in aging joints." As if summoned by their conversation, a temple servant approaches, leading an elderly woman who moves slowly, her hand pressed to her lower back. The physician rises gracefully, brushing soil from his hands, as he greets his patient with the same gentle respect he showed the plants. "The pain has returned, hasn't it?" he asks kindly, guiding her to sit on a smooth stone bench beneath a flowering tamarisk tree. The woman nods, her face tight with discomfort, but already beginning to relax in the peaceful atmosphere of the garden. Khaimwesit watches as Amenemheb moves through his garden with the precision of a temple ritual. From a clay pot, he draws fresh water that sparkles in the sunlight. Into this, he adds leaves from 3 different plants, the nettle they had discussed, along with willow bark and something Khaimwesit doesn't recognize, with small yellow flowers that smell faintly of honey. The willow speaks to pain, the physician explains quietly as he works, his hands steady as he prepares the mixture. The yellow flower, we call it meadowsweet, soothes the stomach and helps the other medicines do their work gently. He stirs the mixture with a wooden spoon worn smooth by countless healings, then sets it aside to steep. While they wait, he leads them along the pathways between the planted rows. Here grows aloe, its thick leaves holding cooling gel for burns. There, mint spreads in careful abundance, ready to ease troubled stomachs and troubled minds alike. Tiny blue flowers mark the chamomile, which brings peaceful sleep to those whose hearts are heavy with worry. Each plant is a gift from the gods, Amenemheb says, pausing beside a patch of deep green herbs that release a sharp, clean scent when disturbed. This is time, it clears the chest and helps the breath flow freely. And this, he touches a plant with silvery leaves, is sage. It strengthens memory and brings clarity to clouded thoughts. The woman on the bench has been listening, her pain forgotten in the gentle rhythm of the physician's words. When he returns with her prepared remedy, she drinks it slowly, savoring not just the healing liquid but the care with which it was prepared. As the morning progresses, more people arrive. A young mother carrying a feverish child, an elderly scribe whose eyes water and blur, a temple guard whose old wound aches with the changing weather. Each is greeted with the same careful attention, each remedy prepared with the same quiet reverence. Khaimwesit finds himself helping, carrying water from the well, gathering herbs under Amenemheb's gentle instruction. The work is peaceful, purposeful, connecting him to something larger than his scrolls and calculations. Here, in this garden where healing grows from the earth itself, he understands another way that knowledge serves the people. The sun climbs higher, and a soft breeze rustles through the leaves, carrying with it the mingled scents of 100 healing plants. In this sanctuary of green and growing things, time seems to slow, and each moment stretches long and peaceful like the eternal flow of the Nile itself. The evening air carries the scent of frankincense, and Myrrh as Kaimwesit follows the high priest up the narrow stone steps that wind along the temple's outer wall. Each footfall echoes softly against the ancient limestone, worn smooth by countless generations of priests who have made this same journey skyward. The sun has long since disappeared beyond the western desert, leaving behind a tapestry of deep purples and midnight blues that stretch endlessly above the sacred Nile. At the top of the temple, a flat roof opens before them like a terrace suspended between earth and heaven. Here, the star watchers have gathered for their nightly vigil. 3 figures in white linen robes stand silently at the roof's edge, their faces turned upward to the emerging constellations. Their movements are deliberate and reverent, as if they are participating in a conversation with the gods themselves. The eldest among them, a woman with silver hair that catches the starlight, turns to greet Kaimwesit with a gentle smile. Her name is Nefertiti Ankh, and she has been reading the celestial messages for more than 30 years. Her voice carries the wisdom of countless nights spent beneath the infinite dome of stars. "Young scribe," she says, her words flowing like water over smooth stones, "tonight you will learn that time itself is written in the heavens above us. The gods speak to those who know how to listen, and their language is painted across the darkness with points of light." She leads him to a low table where papyrus charts are spread beneath the gentle glow of oil lamps. The flames dance quietly, casting warm shadows that seem to make the hieroglyphs move and breathe. These charts map the movements of stars and planets, recording their positions throughout the seasons with meticulous care. "See here," Nefertiti Ankh explains, her finger tracing the delicate lines drawn in black ink, "how soft it rises just before dawn to herald the flooding of our beloved Nile." The goddess appears as the brightest star in the eastern sky, bringing with her the life-giving waters that nurture our land. This is how we know when to prepare for the inundation, when to plant our seeds, when to harvest our grain. Kaimwesit leans closer, watching as she demonstrates how the priests use measuring instruments made of wood and bronze to track the stars' positions. The tools are simple yet elegant, their surfaces polished smooth by years of careful handling. A merkit, a sighting tool with a weighted string, allows them to align with specific stars as they move across the night sky. The younger astronomers show him how they divide the night into 12 equal portions, each marked by the rising of different star groups. These celestial clocks help the temple maintain its rhythm of prayers and offerings, ensuring that every ritual happens at its appointed time. The precision is remarkable, yet it feels natural, as organic as the river's flow or the desert wind's patterns. As the night deepens, more stars emerge from the velvet darkness. The Milky Way appears like a celestial river, flowing parallel to the earthly Nile below. Nefertiti Ankh points out the circumpolar stars that never set, eternal guardians that wheel around the northern point of the sky. These she calls the imperishable ones, souls of the blessed dead who have achieved immortality among the gods. The Pharaoh himself becomes one with these eternal stars upon his death. She whispers, her voice barely audible above the gentle night breeze. His pyramid points toward them, a stairway to the heavens, ensuring his soul's safe passage to the afterlife. They observe in comfortable silence as the moon rises, casting silver light across the temple grounds below. The astronomers work quietly, making notations on their papyrus, recording the night's observations for future reference. Their movements are practiced and serene, like a sacred dance performed between earth and sky. Kaimwesit feels a profound sense of connection, as he stands among these guardians of celestial wisdom. The vastness of the night sky no longer seems overwhelming, but rather comforting, like a great protective canopy woven by the gods themselves. He begins to understand how the ancient rhythms of sun and stars, flood and harvest, birth and death, all flow together in one great cosmic harmony. The Star Watchers continue their patient vigil as the night grows deeper, their quiet presence a bridge between the temporal world of the living and the eternal realm of the gods. Here, beneath the infinite dome of stars, time moves differently, measured not in heartbeats but in the slow dance of celestial bodies across the vast expanse of night. In this sacred space, Ka'emwesit learns that true wisdom lies not only in reading hieroglyphs on papyrus, but in deciphering the divine messages written across the heavens themselves, where every star tells a story, and every constellation holds the secrets of the gods. The morning sun cast long shadows through the latticed windows of the perfume workshop as Ka'emwesit stepped across the threshold, his reed pen and papyrus clutched gently in his weathered hands. The air here was different, thick with layers of fragrance that seemed to embrace him like the softest linen. Frankincense mingled with myrrh, while beneath these sacred scents drifted the sweeter notes of lotus and jasmine, creating an atmosphere so rich it felt almost tangible. The master perfumer, an elderly man named Amenhotep, whose fingers had grown stained amber from decades of working with precious oils, looked up from his work table and offered a serene smile. His movements were unhurried as he ground dried petals between two smooth stones, the gentle scraping sound rhythmic and meditative. Around him, apprentices worked in peaceful concentration, each absorbed in their own delicate tasks. Ka'emwesit settled onto a low stool beside a window where the light fell warm across his papyrus. He dipped his reed into the black ink and began to document what he witnessed, his strokes careful and deliberate. The workshop was spacious and airy, with high ceilings that allowed the fragrant vapors to circulate freely. Clay vessels of every size lined wooden shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling, each containing oils and essences from the farthest reaches of the known world. In one corner, a young apprentice tended to a gentle flame beneath a bronze distillation vessel. Steam rose slowly from the spout, condensing into precious drops of rose oil that fell like liquid gold into a waiting alabaster cup. The process was mesmerizing in its simplicity, petals and water transformed by heat and patience into something far more valuable than either component alone. The apprentice's face was serene, his breathing slow and steady as he maintained the perfect temperature through subtle adjustments to the flame. Amenhotep moved to a table laden with small ceramic bowls, each containing a different component of his craft. There were chunks of aromatic resin from trees that grew in distant lands, their surfaces gleaming like amber jewels. Dried flower petals formed small mountains of color, deep purple violets, golden marigolds, and pristine white jasmine blossoms. The perfumer's hands moved with the grace of a temple dancer as he selected a pinch of this, a grain of that, building his creation with the patience of one who understood that true beauty could not be rushed. The scribe watched as Amenhotep heated a small quantity of precious myrrh resin in a copper pan. The substance melted slowly, releasing waves of smoky sweetness that made Ka'emwesit think of the temple ceremonies he had witnessed, where priests waved censers filled with burning incense before the golden statues of the gods. The perfumer's eyes remained half-closed as he worked, trusting his nose more than his sight to guide the process. On another table, oils of various colors gleamed in glass vials that caught and scattered the afternoon light. There was the deep green of cedar oil, extracted from wood that had traveled down the Nile from far southern lands. Beside it sat vials of pale yellow safflower oil and the nearly colorless but intensely fragrant essence of white lotus. When Amenhotep combined even the smallest amounts of these precious liquids, the resulting fragrance seemed to transport Ka'emwesit to gardens where pharaohs once walked in contemplation. The workshop's apprentices moved in harmony, each understanding their role in this ancient dance of creation. One young woman carefully strained flower-infused oil through fine linen, her movements so gentle that not a single drop was wasted. Another ground cinnamon bark to powder, the sweet spice filling the air with warmth. Their faces held expressions of deep contentment, as if the very act of creating beauty brought peace to their souls. As the day progressed, Khaum documented the subtle techniques passed down through generations. He wrote of how the craftsmen would test their blends on small pieces of linen, waving them gently in the air to judge the balance of scents. He described the way they layered fragrances like painters mixing colors, base notes of earthy vetiver, heart notes of blooming lotus, and top notes of bright citrus that would greet the wearer first before settling into the deeper, more complex symphony beneath. The afternoon light grew golden as it slanted through the workshop windows, illuminating motes of fragrant dust that danced in the air like tiny spirits. The sounds were gentle and rhythmic, the soft grinding of pestle against mortar, the quiet bubbling of oils being heated, the gentle clink of glass against ceramic. Through it all, the perfumers worked with the serenity of those who had found their calling in creating something that brought joy to others. As evening approached and Khaum prepared to return to his quarters, the master perfumer approached with a small vial of oil. The gift carried the essence of their day's work, a perfect harmony of sacred frankincense and earthly jasmine that would forever remind the scribe of this peaceful sanctuary, where beauty was born from patience, skill, and the gentle wisdom of countless generations. The morning sun rises slowly over the endless expanse of sand, painting the dunes in shades of gold and amber. You follow Khaum as he adjusts the linen cloth wrapped around his head, protecting himself from the desert's gentle but persistent heat. Today's journey takes him away from the familiar comfort of the Nile's banks, inland toward a destination whispered about in the villages, a sacred oasis known as the Jewel of the Western Sands. His sandaled feet sink slightly into the warm sand with each measured step. The scribble satchel bounces gently against his side, containing precious papyrus and reed pens that will soon capture the stories of this remarkable place. Behind him, the green ribbon of the Nile gradually fades into the distance, while ahead, the desert stretches like an ocean of burnished copper under the climbing sun. The silence here is profound, broken only by the whisper of wind across the dunes and the soft rhythm of Khaum breathing. This is the desert's gift, a quietude so complete it seems to slow time itself. The scribe pauses occasionally to rest, finding shade behind weathered rocks that tell their own ancient stories through layers of sandstone and limestone. As the sun reaches its gentle peak, something miraculous begins to emerge on the horizon. At first, it appears as a shimmer, a trick of light dancing across the heated air. But gradually, unmistakably, the emerald tops of date palms become visible, swaying like welcoming hands against the azure sky. The oasis grows larger with each step, revealing itself as nature's most generous gift to this austere landscape. The transformation is breathtaking. One moment, Khaum walks through endless sand, and the next he steps into a world transformed. Cool shade envelops him as towering date palms create a natural canopy overhead, their fronds rustling with a sound like gentle rain. The temperature drops noticeably here, the air carrying the blessed scent of fresh water and growing things. A spring bubbles up from deep within the earth, its waters crystal clear and surprisingly cool. The sound is music after the desert silence, a soft gurgling and trickling that speaks of life itself. Khaum kneels beside the water, cupping it in his hands to drink. It tastes of minerals and earth, pure and revitalizing, as if the desert has distilled all its hidden treasures into this single, life-giving source. Around the spring, a small community has flourished. Mud brick dwellings sit nestled among the palms, their walls painted white to reflect the sun's rays. Children play quietly in the shade, their laughter mixing with the sound of water and wind through leaves. Women tend small gardens where vegetables grow in neat rows, Their green shoots a miracle of persistence against the surrounding sand. An elder approaches, his weathered face creased with welcome lines. His name is Amenhotep, and he has been the oasis's keeper for more than 40 years. He speaks slowly, thoughtfully, sharing stories of how this place has sustained his people through seasons of plenty and times of challenge. The oasis, he explains, teaches patience. The date palms take 7 years to bear fruit, but once they do, they provide sustenance for generations. Khaimwesit settles beneath the largest palm, its trunk worn smooth by decades of grateful hands. He opens his leather satchel and withdraws fresh papyrus, preparing to capture this moment in hieroglyphs. His reed pen moves steadily across the surface, recording not just facts but feelings, the profound peace that settles over the soul in this green sanctuary, the way the light filters through palm fronds, creating dancing patterns on the ground. The afternoon passes like honey, slow and golden. Khaimwesit learns about the delicate balance that sustains this place. Too many visitors would overwhelm the spring, too few, and the knowledge of its location might be lost. The oasis dwellers understand their role as guardians, protecting something precious not just for themselves, but for future generations who might desperately need this refuge. As evening approaches, the scribe helps gather dates from the lower branches, marveling at their sweetness and the way they store the desert sun's energy in each amber morsel. He shares a simple meal with his hosts, dates, flatbread, and cool water from the spring. The conversation flows gently, touching on matters of family, seasons, and the eternal rhythm of desert life. When night finally claims the oasis, Khaimwesit lies on a woven mat beneath the stars, listening to the gentle sounds of this miraculous place. The contrast overwhelms him, the harsh beauty of the surrounding desert and this pocket of verdant life. Both are necessary, he realizes. The desert teaches appreciation, the oasis provides restoration. Tomorrow, he will return to the Nile, carrying with him the oasis's greatest gift, the knowledge that even in the most challenging places, life finds a way to flourish and hope springs eternal from the deepest, most unexpected sources. The morning sun filters through the narrow windows of the jeweler's workshop, casting dancing patterns of light across polished copper vessels filled with precious stones. Khaimwesit steps into this sacred space where beauty is born from Earth's treasures, the air thick with the gentle scent of beeswax and the whisper-soft sound of hammers tapping against gold. Master Senenmut looks up from his workbench, his weathered hands cradling a piece of electrum that gleams like captured sunlight. Around him, apprentices work in concentrated silence, their movements as precise as temple rituals. Each tool has its place, each gesture carries the weight of generations of knowledge passed down through careful hands. The workshop hums with quiet industry. In one corner, a young artisan carefully cuts carnelian beads, each one destined to catch light in a noble's collar. The steady rhythm of his work creates a gentle percussion that mingles with the soft scraping of files against silver. Nearby, another craftsman shapes gold wire into delicate spirals, his breath steady and measured as he coaxes the metal into graceful curves. Khaimwesit watches as Senenmut demonstrates the ancient art of granulation, tiny spheres of gold being fused onto a bracelet's surface. The technique requires perfect timing, perfect temperature, perfect patience. Too much heat and the gold melts away like morning mist. Too little and the granules refuse to bond. But in Senenmut's experienced hands, the process unfolds like a prayer made manifest in metal. The master jeweler's tools are works of art themselves. Hammers worn smooth by countless hours of use, their faces polished to mirror brightness. Chasing tools carved from antler, each one shaped for a specific purpose. Files made from hardened bronze, their surfaces textured with infinite precision. These instruments have created beauty for pharaohs and gods, their worth measured not in gold but in the wonders they have helped birth. A collection of finished pieces rests on a velvet cloth nearby, waiting to fulfill their destinies. A pectoral bearing the cartouche of Ramesses gleams with inlaid turquoise and lapis lazuli, each stone cut to fit its setting with mathematical precision. Golden earrings shaped like lotus flowers seem ready to bloom in the soft light. A bracelet of interwoven gold and silver bands creates patterns that flow like the Nile itself, eternal and ever-changing. Senenmut explains his craft in a voice worn smooth by years of teaching. He speaks of how gold never tarnishes, how it holds its beauty through all the ages, making it perfect for the eternal life that awaits in the afterworld. Silver, he says, reflects the moon's pure light, while copper carries the warmth of the sun. Each metal has its purpose, its divine connection to the cosmic order. The jeweler shows Kaimwesit a special commission, a ceremonial collar for the high priest of Ta. Hundreds of tiny gold beads are being strung with faience amulets, each one blessed and consecrated. The work will take months to complete, but when finished, it will serve not just as ornamentation, but as protection for the wearer's journey through the afterlife. In another section of the workshop, precious stones await their transformation. Emeralds from the eastern desert rest in small baskets, their green depths holding mysteries of the earth. Amethyst beads catch the light like drops of divine wine. Turquoise, sacred to Hathor, waits to become symbols of rebirth and renewal. Each stone carries its own power, its own blessing to bestow upon those who wear it. The apprentices work with the reverence of temple acolytes. They understand that their craft serves purposes beyond mere decoration. The jewelry they create will accompany nobles to their eternal rest, providing beauty and protection in the afterworld. Some pieces will adorn statues of gods, becoming part of the divine presence that watches over Egypt. As the day progresses, the workshop fills with the gentle music of creation. The soft whisper of files against metal, the quiet tapping of hammers, the almost inaudible sound of breath held in concentration. These sounds weave together into a symphony of craftsmanship that has echoed through these walls for generations. Senenmut's movements are meditative, each gesture flowing into the next with practiced grace. He shapes gold as easily as a potter shapes clay, his fingers sensing the metal's willingness to bend, to flow, to become something greater than its raw form. Watching him work is like witnessing a form of worship, where devotion is expressed through the creation of lasting beauty. As evening approaches and the workshop grows quiet, Kaimwesit reflects on the day's observations. Here, in this sacred space of creation, he has witnessed the transformation of Earth's treasures into objects of divine beauty. The jeweler's craft bridges the world of men and gods, creating beauty that will endure long after the hands that shaped it have returned to dust. The finished pieces rest peacefully on their velvet beds, ready to carry their beauty and blessings into the world, each one a small miracle of human skill and divine inspiration. The morning sun filters through the reed screens of the Scribe school, casting gentle patterns of light and shadow across the polished stone floor. Kaimwesit pauses at the entrance, his sandals silent against the smooth surface as he observes the sacred ritual of learning that unfolds before him. The air carries the familiar scent of fresh papyrus and the earthy aroma of wet clay, mingling with the soft fragrance of lotus blossoms from the nearby temple gardens. 20 young students sit cross-legged in neat rows, their heads bent in concentration over wooden practice boards coated with a thin layer of fine sand. Their small fingers grip reed brushes with careful determination, tracing the ancient symbols that have carried the wisdom of Egypt through countless generations. The gentle scratching of reeds against sand creates a peaceful rhythm, like rain falling softly on temple stones. Master Amenhotep moves between the rows with the unhurried grace of a heron wading through still water. His voice flows like the Nile itself, calm and constant as he guides his young charges through the mysteries of hieroglyphic writing. Remember, children, he says, his words measured and kind. Each symbol carries the breath of the gods. Write with reverence, and your letters will carry truth. Kaimwesit watches as a small boy of perhaps 8 years struggles with the complex symbol for life. His tongue pokes out slightly in concentration, his brow furrowed with effort. Master Amenhotep notices and kneels beside the child, his voice gentle as morning mist. Feel the symbol in your heart first, young Seneb. The ink is the gift of breath from Ra himself. When you understand its meaning, your hand will find its shape. The teacher's weathered hand covers the boy's smaller one, guiding the reed brush in slow, deliberate strokes. Here, the loop of eternal life. Now, the crossbar of balance between earth and sky. Finally, the staff that grounds us to the sacred soil of our beloved Egypt. The child's eyes brighten with understanding, and his next attempt flows with newfound confidence. Across the room, a young girl practices writing her name, each hieroglyph carefully formed with the patience of one who has learned that wisdom cannot be rushed. Her movements are deliberate and mindful, the reed brush dancing across the sand like a bird tracing patterns in the sky. When she completes her name, she looks up with quiet pride, seeking the approving nod of her teacher. The walls of the schoolroom tell their own stories, decorated with examples of perfect script in black and red ink on crisp white papyrus. Prayers to Thoth, the wise god of writing, are interspersed with practiced sentences about the beauty of the Nile, the strength of the Pharaoh, and the bounty of the harvest. Each piece of writing represents hours of patient practice, the gradual transformation of eager young minds into the learned scribes who will serve Egypt in the years to come. Master Amenhotep begins the morning's lesson on the sacred art of mixing ink. The children gather around as he demonstrates the ancient ritual, grinding charcoal and red ochre with practiced movements, adding just enough water and gum arabic to create the perfect consistency. The ink is the blood of our thoughts, he explains, his voice carrying the weight of tradition. Prepare it with care, for through it, you give life to ideas that may outlast the pyramids themselves. Khamwasit remembers his own days as a student, the ache in his back from long hours of practice, the joy of finally mastering a difficult symbol, the pride in his teacher's eyes when a lesson was well learned. He recalls the patient correction of mistakes, never harsh but always guiding, like a gardener tending precious seedlings. The discipline was gentle but constant, shaped by the understanding that knowledge is the greatest treasure Egypt can offer its children. A soft bell chimes from the temple complex, signaling the end of the morning's first session. The children carefully clean their brushes and set aside their practice boards, their movements unhurried and respectful. They file out quietly to take their midday meal in the garden courtyard, their voices blending in soft conversation about the morning's lessons. As the classroom empties, Khamwasit feels the timeless peace of this sacred space where knowledge passes from one generation to the next. The late morning light streams through the reed screens, illuminating tiny particles of dust that dance in the air like golden thoughts made visible. Here, in this quiet corner of the world, the eternal wisdom of Egypt continues its gentle flow, as constant and life-giving as the sacred Nile itself. The first whispers of dawn are stirring along the sacred Nile, and you find yourself walking beside Khamwasit through the quiet streets of a riverside village. The air carries a coolness that will soon give way to the day's warmth, and already the gentle sounds of awakening drift from the mud brick houses that line the narrow pathways. As you round a corner, the most wonderful aroma reaches you, both the rich, earthy scent of bread beginning to bake. Khamwasit pauses, closing his eyes and breathing deeply. The bakers, he says softly, they are the first guardians of each new day. You follow him toward the source of this comforting fragrance, your sandals making soft sounds against the packed earth beneath your feet. The village bakery reveals itself as a cluster of dome-shaped ovens built of clay and stone, their surfaces already warm to the touch as you approach. The bakers have been working in the pre-dawn darkness, and now their quiet industry unfolds before you like a sacred ritual. 3 women knead dough on low wooden tables, their movements rhythmic and practiced, hands working the mixture with a patience that speaks of generations of knowledge passed down through their families. One of the bakers, her hair covered with a simple linen cloth, looks up and nods respectfully to Khamwasit. "Peace be upon you, honored scribe," she says, her voice soft in the morning stillness. "Would you care to see how the day's bread is born?" Ka'imwesit accepts graciously, and you both settle onto a low bench nearby, becoming quiet observers of this ancient dance. The woman returns to her work, and you watch as she shapes the dough with careful attention, her fingers creating perfect rounds that will soon become the sustenance for dozens of families in this peaceful village. The first oven is opened, and waves of heat shimmer in the cool morning air. Inside, loaves from an earlier batch have turned golden brown, their crusts crackling softly as they cool. The baker uses a long wooden paddle to carefully remove each loaf, placing them in woven baskets lined with clean linen cloths. The sight is deeply satisfying, these simple rounds of bread representing not just nourishment, but care, tradition, and community. A second baker begins to feed fresh dough into another oven, sliding the shaped loaves onto the hot stone floor with practiced precision. The raw dough seems to sigh as it meets the heat, beginning its transformation from pale, soft rounds into the golden sustenance that will grace tables throughout the village before the sun reaches its zenith. You notice how the bakers work together without words, each understanding her role in this morning symphony. One tends the fires, feeding them with dried palm fronds that crackle pleasantly and send up thin streams of aromatic smoke. Another sprinkles the shaped loaves with seeds, some with sesame, others with nigella, creating patterns that are both beautiful and purposeful. The warmth from the ovens begins to spread through the small courtyard, chasing away the last coolness of night. Birds are beginning to call from the nearby date palms, their songs mixing with the gentle sounds of the bakers work the soft thump of kneading, the whisper of flour being scattered on work surfaces, the quiet murmur of women sharing observations about the day's batch. Ka'imwesit pulls out a small reed and a piece of papyrus from his writing kit. "I must capture this," he says quietly, beginning to form hieroglyphs that will preserve this moment of simple industry. You watch as he writes about the wisdom of these women, their connection to the cycles of grain and harvest, their role as nourishers of their community. A young girl appears, perhaps the daughter of one of the bakers, carrying a jar of fresh water from the Nile. She moves quietly among the workers, offering drinks and occasionally helping to shape the smaller loaves that will be perfect for children's hands. Her presence adds another layer of continuity to the scene, this knowledge being passed naturally from mother to daughter, generation to generation. As the sun climbs higher, more loaves emerge from the ovens, filling the baskets with their golden abundance. The bakers work with unhurried concentration, knowing that their neighbors depend on this daily bread, this fundamental act of care that connects every person in the village to the bounty of the earth and the blessing of the Nile's annual flood. The scene fills you with a deep sense of peace. Here, in this simple courtyard with its clay ovens and wooden paddles, with these women whose hands know the ancient secrets of grain and fire, you witness something timeless and sacred. The day has begun not with fanfare, but with this quiet dedication, this humble service that sustains life itself. The morning sun filters through the stone columns of Bastet's temple, casting long shadows that dance across the polished limestone floor. You walk beside Ka'imwesit as he enters this sacred space, his leather satchel containing fresh papyrus and carefully prepared ink. The air here carries a different quality than the bustling markets of Memphis, quieter, more reverent, filled with the soft sounds of padding paws and gentle purring. A sleek black cat emerges from behind a pillar, regarding you both with golden eyes that seem to hold ancient wisdom. She approaches without fear, weaving between your legs in a graceful figure-8 pattern before settling in a patch of warm sunlight. Ka'imwesit smiles, setting down his writing materials with deliberate care. He has learned that in Bastet's domain, one must move with the same fluid patience as the cats themselves. The temple keeper, an elderly woman named Nebet, glides toward you wearing simple linen robes the color of desert sand. Her arms cradle a copper-colored kitten, its tiny paws kneading contentedly against the soft fabric. "Welcome, Scribe," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "The goddess smiles upon your visit today. The cats are particularly peaceful this morning, As if summoned by her words, more cats begin to appear from the temple's shadowy corners. A gray tabby stretches languidly atop a carved offering table. Two orange kittens tumble playfully around the base of Bastet's statue, their movements careful and respectful even in play. An ancient white cat, her fur like spun moonlight, watches from her perch on the windowsill, tail swishing slowly in the gentle breeze. Kaimwesit arranges his papyrus on a low table made of acacia wood, its surface worn smooth by countless years of use. He grinds his pigments with methodical precision, carbon black from charred bone, red ochre from the desert cliffs, and blue from precious lapis lazuli. Each color has its purpose in documenting the sacred mysteries he witnesses here. Tell me about the cat's daily rituals, he asks Nebet, his reed pen poised above the cream-colored papyrus. The temple keeper settles beside him, the kitten now purring in her lap like a small, furry engine of contentment. They wake with the sun, she begins, her fingers stroking the kitten's copper fur. Each morning, they visit the sacred pool for their cleansing. Watch, you will see them approach the water with the same reverence they show the goddess herself. As if responding to her invitation, several cats pad silently toward a shallow basin carved from black granite. The water within sparkles like liquid jewels, fed by channels that connect to the Nile's eternal flow. One by one, the cats drink, their pink tongues creating tiny ripples that catch the morning light. They pause between sips, as though offering prayers of gratitude to the source of all life. Kaimwesit's pen moves across the papyrus in smooth, confident strokes. He captures not just the cat's actions, but the profound peace that seems to emanate from their very presence. Here, in this temple, the boundary between mortal and divine feels thin as morning mist. Each cat carries within themselves a spark of Bastet's protective power, a living blessing that walks on silent paws. A young priest enters the temple carrying bowls of fresh fish and cream. The cats gather around him with dignity rather than desperation, waiting their turn as he portions out the offerings. Even the hungriest kitten maintains an air of grace, as though understanding that they dine not merely as animals, but as earthly representatives of the goddess herself. They never fight over food, Nebet observes, watching Kaimwesit record this remarkable scene. It is as if they understand their sacred nature, their responsibility to embody Bastet's gentle strength and protective love. The afternoon deepens, and you notice how the cats seem to move in harmony with the temple's rhythms. Some curl up in the warm pools of sunlight, their breathing slow and even. Others patrol the perimeter with alert but peaceful vigilance, natural guardians keeping watch over this holy space. Their presence transforms the temple from mere stone and mortar into something alive, breathing, divine. As shadows lengthen across the floor, Kaimwesit carefully caps his ink and sets aside his pen. His papyrus now holds not just words and images, but the essence of this sacred place, the perfect balance between human devotion and divine presence that the cats embody so effortlessly. The black cat from morning returns, settling beside his writing materials as if offering her blessing to his work. Her purr resonates through the stone chamber like a prayer made audible, a sound that speaks of contentment, protection, and the eternal cycle of life that flows as surely as the Nile itself. Here, among Bastet's beloved children, you understand that divinity reveals itself not only in grand temples and elaborate ceremonies, but in the simple act of creatures living in harmony with their sacred nature, padding softly through pools of golden sunlight. The morning sun casts long shadows across the vineyard terraces as you, Kaimwesit, follow the winding path that leads down toward the Nile's edge. The air here carries a different fragrance than the dusty courtyards of the palace, sweeter, richer, filled with the essence of ripening grapes and fertile earth. Ancient sycamore trees provide gentle shade, their broad leaves rustling softly in the river breeze. Before you stretch neat rows of grapevines, their heavy clusters hanging like jeweled ornaments in the golden light. The vines twist and curl around wooden supports, creating natural archways that frame glimpses of the sacred river beyond. Workers move slowly between the rows, their movements unhurried and deliberate, following rhythms established by countless seasons of cultivation. An elderly vineyard keeper approaches, his weathered hands stained purple from years of harvest. His smile is warm as he gestures toward the terrace slopes. "Welcome, honored scribe," he says, his voice carrying the contentment of one who has found his place in the world. "The vines are heavy this season. The Nile's blessing has been generous." You walk together along the terraced rows, noting how each vine has been carefully tended. The keeper explains how the young shoots were pruned in spring, how the clusters were thinned to ensure the remaining grapes would grow full and sweet. His words flow like the gentle current of the river below, describing a cycle of care that spans from the flood season to the harvest moon. Workers gather beneath an ancient olive tree for their midday meal, sharing bread and figs while discussing the day's progress. Their laughter drifts across the vineyard like birdsong, mixing with the distant sound of water lapping against the riverbank. Children play nearby, weaving small crowns from grapevine leaves while their mothers sort through baskets of freshly picked fruit. The keeper leads you to the pressing area, where large stone basins wait beneath woven canopies. Soon, he explains, when the grapes reach perfect sweetness, we will begin the harvest dance. He describes how workers will tread the grapes with bare feet, their movements synchronized like a sacred ritual. The juice will flow into clay vessels, beginning its transformation into the wine that graces Pharaoh's table. You observe the careful inspection of each cluster, how experienced hands test for the perfect balance of sweetness and acidity. The vineyard keeper shows you vines that are older than memory, their gnarled trunks thick as temple columns, yet still producing fruit of exceptional quality. These vines, he says reverently, have witnessed the reigns of many pharaohs. They connect us to our ancestors through their roots that drink from the same soil. The afternoon light grows softer as you visit the storage caves carved into the hillside. Here, in the cool darkness, amphorae rest in neat rows, their contents slowly maturing. The keeper opens one vessel, allowing you to breathe in the rich aroma that speaks of sun-warmed grapes and patient time. The wine within glows like liquid amber in the dim light, holding the essence of countless peaceful days. As evening approaches, you sit with the vineyard workers as they share stories of exceptional harvests and challenging seasons. Their tales weave together like the vines themselves, creating a tapestry of human connection to the land. An old woman speaks of her grandmother's techniques for selecting the finest grapes, wisdom passed down through generations like treasured scrolls. The setting sun paints the vineyard in shades of gold and crimson, the same colors that fill the wine cups at royal feasts. Night-blooming jasmine releases its fragrance into the cooling air, mingling with the earthy scents of the vineyard. Fireflies begin to dance among the vines, their gentle lights flickering like tiny stars fall into earth. The keeper walks with you back toward the path, his steps slow and contemplative. The wine captures more than the grape's sweetness, he reflects. It holds the warmth of these days, the dedication of these hands, the blessing of the river's flood. His words carry the deep satisfaction of work that serves both earthly pleasure and divine celebration. As you prepare to continue your journey along the sacred Nile, the sounds of the vineyard settle into evening's gentle rhythm. Workers call goodnight to one another across the terraces, their voices carrying notes of contentment and gratitude. The river flows past in its eternal course, carrying the day's warmth toward tomorrow's promise. The vineyard rests in peaceful darkness, its vines heavy with fruit that will soon become liquid joy in the cups of kings and commoners alike. In this quiet place where human skill meets nature's abundance, the eternal cycle of cultivation and harvest continues, as constant and reassuring as the Nile's own sacred flow. The morning air carries the scent of natron and sacred oils as you, Kawemwesit, approach the workshop of the mummy makers. Your papyrus and reed pen rest securely in your leather satchel, ready to record the ancient rituals that have preserved the dead for generations beyond counting. The sun casts long, gentle shadows across the limestone buildings, and the Nile whispers softly in the distance, its eternal rhythm matching the measured pace of the craftsman within. You pause at the threshold, removing your sandals as custom demands. The workshop extends before you like a temple dedicated to eternity itself. Smooth stone tables line the chamber, each one worn smooth by centuries of careful use. Canopic jars sit in neat rows along the walls, their carved heads watching over the sacred process with silent wisdom. The air is cool and dry, perfumed with frankincense that drifts from bronze censers stationed throughout the room. The master embalmer, a man whose weathered hands speak of decades devoted to this sacred craft, nods to you with quiet respect. His eyes hold the deep knowledge of one who has prepared thousands for their journey to the afterlife. He moves with the fluid grace of a priest, each gesture deliberate and meaningful. Around him, his assistants work in contemplative silence, their movements forming a dance as old as the pyramids themselves. You settle onto a low stool in the corner, your writing materials arranged with care. The soft scratch of your reed pen against papyrus blends seamlessly with the gentle sounds of the workshop. Water trickles from clay vessels as the craftsmen cleanse their hands between tasks. The rhythmic grinding of herbs and spices in marble mortars creates a soothing percussion, like distant temple drums calling the faithful to prayer. The deceased before you lies wrapped in fine linen, honored and cherished. The embalmers speak in hushed tones, sharing stories of the person's life, their accomplishments, their family. You record these details, understanding that your words will help preserve not just their techniques, but the love and reverence that guides their work. Each wrapping, each prayer, each carefully applied resin is an act of devotion to the eternal journey that awaits us all. Sunlight filters through high windows, casting shifting patterns across the workshop floor. The light moves like water, flowing from table to table, blessing the ancient ritual with golden warmth. You watch as the master embalmer demonstrates the proper way to position amulets within the wrappings, each small figure placed with the precision of a jeweler setting precious stones. The heart scarab finds its place over the chest, ready to speak truth in the halls of judgment. The afternoon deepens, and your papyrus fills with careful observations. You note how the linen strips overlap in patterns that have remained unchanged for centuries, creating a cocoon of protection and dignity. The embalmers work with the patience of gardeners tending eternal flowers, never rushing, always mindful of the sacred trust placed in their skilled hands. Their movements are meditation made manifest, each action flowing seamlessly into the next. As shadows lengthen across the workshop floor, you observe the final preparations. Holy oils, extracted from distant trees and blessed by temple priests, are applied with brushes made from the finest reeds. The fragrance rises like incense, carrying prayers upward to the waiting gods. The master embalmer speaks softly to the deceased, offering words of guidance for the journey ahead, his voice gentle as a father blessing a sleeping child. The wrapping nears completion as the first stars appear through the windows above. Layer upon layer of linen creates a chrysalis of protection, each strip blessed and positioned according to ancient wisdom. The craftsmen move in perfect harmony, their hands working together like musicians in a sacred orchestra. Gold leaf catches the lamplight, adding touches of divine radiance to the careful wrappings. You close your writing tablet as the day's work concludes, your records complete. The workshop falls into deeper silence as the embalmers begin their evening prayers, offering gratitude for their sacred calling. The deceased rests peacefully, prepared for eternity, surrounded by the love and skill of master craftsmen who understand that death is not an ending, but a transformation. Outside, the Nile continues its eternal song, carrying away the day's heat and replacing it with cool evening breezes. Stars reflect on the water's surface like scattered diamonds, and you know that somewhere among those celestial lights, the souls prepared in this workshop join the eternal dance of the heavens. The mummy makers have completed another act of love, another gift of immortality, and the ancient cycle continues as it always has and always will. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nile's surface when you first spotted it on the horizon, a gleam of gold that seemed to float upon the sacred waters like a vision from the realm of the gods. You set down your reed pen and papyrus scroll, abandoning your careful copying of temple records to step closer to the riverbank. Your sandaled feet pressed into the cool mud at the water's edge as you shielded your eyes against the growing brilliance approaching from the north. The royal barge emerged from the river's gentle curve like something born from the dreams of craftsmen and the prayers of priests. Its hull stretched longer than 3 common vessels placed end to end, carved from the finest cedar of Lebanon and gilded until it blazed like a captured piece of Ra's own chariot. The prow rose high above the water, shaped into the elegant neck and head of a sacred ibis, its golden beak pointing toward the southern reaches of the kingdom with divine purpose. Purple and white linen banners fluttered from tall poles along the vessel's length, each bearing the cardach of the Pharaoh, those sacred hieroglyphs that spelled out the name of the living God who ruled from Memphis. The fabric caught the morning breeze and danced against the azure sky, creating patterns of shadow and light that shifted like the wings of celestial birds. You could hear the rhythmic splash of oars cutting through the Nile's current, though the rowers remained hidden within the barge's ornate cabin structures. The sound carried across the water with a hypnotic regularity, like a great heartbeat pulsing along the river's length. Between the oar strokes, the gentle lapping of water against the gilded hull created a soothing melody that seemed to harmonize with the distant calls of ibises and the whisper of reeds along the shore. As the magnificent vessel drew nearer, you began to make out the intricate carvings that adorned every visible surface. Lotus flowers bloomed in eternal stone along the cabin walls, their petals picked out in lapis lazuli in gold. Sacred eyes of Horus gazed from both sides of the hull, watching over the pharaoh's journey with protective power. Hieroglyphic inscriptions ran in neat columns between the decorative motifs, their carefully chiseled symbols telling stories of divine kingship and eternal life. The central cabin rose like a temple upon the water, its walls constructed of precious woods inlaid with ivory and precious stones. Gossamer curtains of the finest linen hung between slender columns, stirring gently in the river breeze but concealing the sacred person of the pharaoh from common view. Only occasionally did you catch a glimpse of movement within, the flash of a golden ornament, the edge of royal regalia, the shadow of divine majesty that mortal eyes were not meant to fully behold. Smaller vessels flanked the royal barge like loyal servants attending their master. Swift patrol boats cut through the water ahead and behind, their crews scanning the riverbanks with vigilant eyes. Supply barges followed at a respectful distance, their holds weighted with provisions for the pharaoh's southern journey, amphorae of the finest wines, baskets of bread made from the purest grain, oils, and incense for the temple ceremonies that would mark the royal progress through the kingdom. You found yourself holding your breath as the flotilla passed directly before your viewing point. The water seemed to grow calmer in the wake of the royal barge, as if the Nile itself recognized the divine presence and smoothed its surface in reverence. The very air felt charged with an otherworldly stillness, broken only by the distant sound of ceremonial sistrums being played within the hidden cabin, their metallic whisper adding an ethereal music to the pharaoh's passage. A priest emerged briefly from behind the linen curtains, his shaved head gleaming in the sunlight as he cast flower petals into the sacred river. The white lotus blossoms scattered across the barge's wake like fallen stars, drifting slowly on the current long after the magnificent vessel had passed. You watched them float past your feet, each petal a small blessing carried by the eternal waters toward the Mediterranean far to the north. As the royal flotilla continued its stately progress toward the southern territories, growing smaller and more dreamlike with distance, you felt a profound sense of having witnessed something beyond the ordinary realm of scribes and temple records. The pharaoh was journeying to inspect the great monuments being carved from the living rock at Abu Simbel, to ensure that his divine legacy would endure for all eternity along these sacred shores. You returned to your papyrus and reed pen with renewed purpose, knowing that your own small role in recording the kingdom's daily affairs was part of the same grand tapestry being woven by divine hands. The memory of golden glory upon the Nile would remain with you always, a reminder of the majesty that flowed through every aspect of life along these blessed waters. The morning mist clings to the water like a gentle embrace as your boat glides silently through the papyrus swamps. Here, in this sacred wetland where the Nile spreads its fingers wide, Kamwesit dips his reed pen into fresh ink and begins to document the quiet wonders that surround him. The air is soft and humid, carrying the earthy scent of marsh water and the sweet fragrance of lotus blooms that float like delicate offerings upon the surface. Tall papyrus stalks rise from the shallow waters, their triangular heads swaying gently in the morning breeze. These elegant plants, reaching toward the sky with graceful precision, form a verdant maze of green corridors and hidden pools. Kamwesit watches as skilled harvesters move among them with practiced ease, their movements creating barely a ripple as they select the finest stalks for their precious cargo. The sound of their cutting tools is rhythmic and soft, like a whispered prayer to the gods of the harvest. You can hear the gentle splash of water against the papyrus roots, where small fish dart between the submerged stems in silver flashes. The scribe's careful hand records how these humble plants provide not just the writing material that records the wisdom of pharaohs, but also food for the people, their tender shoots harvested and prepared with honey and spices. The roots, fibrous and strong, are woven into sandals and baskets, while the pith serves as sustenance during times of plenty. A sacred ibis steps delicately through the shallows nearby, its white plumage pristine against the green backdrop. The bird moves with ancient dignity, each step measured and purposeful as it searches for small fish and frogs among the reeds. Kamwesit pauses in his writing to observe this messenger of Thoth, noting how the god of wisdom seems to bless this place where knowledge itself is born from the humble papyrus plant. The wetlands stretch endlessly in all directions, a labyrinth of waterways and floating islands of vegetation. Here, purple gallinules pick their way across lily pads with bright red beaks, while white egrets stand motionless as statues, their reflections perfect in the still water. The air fills with the soft calls of countless birds, the gentle cooing of doves, the melodic trill of reed warblers, and the distant honking of geese preparing for their seasonal journey. As the sun climbs higher, warm golden light filters through the papyrus canopy, creating patterns of light and shadow that dance upon the water's surface. Butterflies with wings like fragments of blue sky flutter between the flower heads, while dragonflies hover and dart with jeweled precision. The scribe documents how this ecosystem supports not only the creatures that call it home, but the very foundation of Egyptian civilization itself. Women gather at the water's edge, filling clay vessels with the clean marsh water for their households. Children wade in the shallows, their laughter mixing with the gentle lapping of waves against the boat's hull. They search for duck eggs hidden among the reeds, moving carefully to avoid disturbing the nesting birds that trust this sanctuary with their young. The harvesters work in harmony with the natural rhythm of the swamp, taking only what they need and leaving the rest to flourish. Kamwesit records their ancient wisdom, how they know which stalks are ready, how they cut at just the right height to ensure new growth, how they give thanks to the river spirits for their bounty. The papyrus will be carried to workshops where skilled craftsmen will slice it thin, press it flat, and weave it into the sheets that will carry the words of scribes and the decrees of kings. A cool breeze rustles through the marsh, carrying the scent of water lilies and the promise of the river's eternal renewal. Fish jump occasionally, their rings spreading outward in perfect circles that catch and scatter the sunlight. Frogs begin their evening chorus even though the day is still young, their voices creating a symphony of contentment that speaks of an ecosystem in perfect balance. As afternoon settles over the wetlands like a comfortable blanket, Kamwesit sets down his pen and allows himself a moment of quiet reflection. Here, surrounded by the gentle sounds of water and wildlife, he understands that he is witnessing something far greater than the simple harvesting of a plant. He is observing the sacred cycle that connects the gifts of the Nile to the preservation of knowledge, the marriage of nature's bounty with human wisdom. The papyrus swamps hold the secrets of life itself: birth, growth, harvest, and renewal. In this peaceful sanctuary where earth and water merge in perfect harmony, the scribe finds not just the materials for his craft, but inspiration for his soul. The sacred Nile has provided once again, as it has for countless generations, as it will for countless more to come. The morning sun casts long shadows across the desert hills as Khammwaysit follows the well-worn path toward the copper mines. The air carries a different quality here, tinged with the metallic scent of earth turned inside out and the distant sound of rhythmic hammering echoing off stone walls. His sandals crunch softly on the sandy ground, scattered with small chips of green-tinged rock that glint in the early light. As he crests a low ridge, the mining settlement spreads before him like a carefully ordered village. Neat rows of mud brick houses line the valley floor, their flat roofs catching pools of golden sunlight. Smoke rises lazily from cooking fires, and children play between the dwellings while their mothers tend to daily tasks. The harsh reputation of mining work seems softened here by the gentle rhythms of community life. Khammwaysit pauses at the entrance to the main shaft, where a foreman greets him with weathered hands and kind eyes. The man's name is Seneb, and his voice carries the calm authority of someone who has spent decades balancing the demands of stone and human spirit. He explains how the miners work in carefully planned shifts, allowing the earth to rest while families gather for meals and storytelling. The tunnel entrance breathes cool air, a welcome relief from the warming desert. As they descend the gentle slope, oil lamps flicker along the walls, casting dancing shadows that seem to tell their own stories. The passage is wider than Khammwaysit expected, carved with precision and reinforced with wooden beams that speak of careful craftsmanship rather than desperate haste. In the first work chamber, 3 miners chip methodically at a vein of green copper ore. Their movements are deliberate and measured, each strike of bronze chisel against stone creating a percussion that harmonizes with their quiet conversation. They pause frequently to examine their progress, to share water from leather skins, and to adjust the placement of their oil lamps for better light. One of the miners, a young man with gentle eyes named Amenhotep, shows Khammwaysit a particularly fine piece of ore. The green stone seems to glow with inner light, veined with pure copper that will soon become tools for farmers, ornaments for nobles, or perhaps sacred implements for temple rituals. His hands trace the mineral patterns with obvious pride, explaining how each stone tells the story of countless years beneath the earth. As they move deeper into the workings, the sounds of labor blend into a soothing rhythm. Hammers ring against chisels, wooden supports creak softly under their loads, and voices murmur in easy conversation. The miners have developed their own songs, wordless melodies that match the tempo of their work and help maintain the steady pace that prevents exhaustion. In a wider chamber, Khammwaysit discovers the heart of the mining community. During their rest period, workers gather in small groups, sharing simple meals of bread, dried fish, and dates. Fathers teach sons the proper angle for striking stone, while mothers prepare cooling drinks infused with mint and honey. An elderly miner with silver-streaked hair recounts tales of unusual discoveries: perfectly formed crystals, stones that sang when struck, or chambers that revealed ancient seashells far from any ocean. The afternoon light filters down through ventilation shafts, creating pillars of golden dust motes that dance in the still air. Children play quiet games in the sandy areas, building miniature pyramids and drawing hieroglyphs with pointed sticks. Their laughter echoes softly through the tunnels, mixing with the gentle sounds of work resuming as the heat of midday passes. Khammwaysit observes how the miners care for one another with the natural grace of extended family. When one worker's chisel grows dull, another quietly offers a sharpened replacement. Water is shared without request, And when someone's oil lamp gutters low, a colleague wordlessly trims the wick and adds fresh oil. These small gestures weave through the day like threads in a carefully woven cloth. As evening approaches, the mining community gathers in the central courtyard of their village. The day's extracted ore is carefully sorted and weighed, but this administrative task feels more like a peaceful ritual than urgent business. Children help their parents separate the green copper stones from ordinary rock, learning through touch and observation the skills they may one day inherit. The foreman Seneb explains to Kaimwesit how the copper will journey down the Nile, transformed in workshops and forges into the tools and treasures that support all of Egyptian civilization. But here in this desert valley, surrounded by the gentle sounds of evening meals being prepared and families settling into rest, the metal still sleeps peacefully in its stone cocoon, waiting for its own journey to begin. As stars begin to appear overhead, Kaimwesit prepares to continue his travels, carrying with him the memory of this place where hard work and human kindness have found their perfect balance beneath the eternal desert sky. The morning mist rises from the sacred waters as your boat approaches the banks of Kam Ombo, where something extraordinary awaits. Before you stands a temple unlike any other along the Nile, a perfect mirror of stone and symmetry, where two gods share one sacred space in harmonious balance. You step onto the weathered limestone dock, your sandals silent against the ancient stones. The temple looms before you, its twin entrances beckoning like open arms. This is the temple of Sobek and Horus, where the crocodile god of the river meets the falcon god of the sky, and where opposing forces find perfect equilibrium. The morning sun casts long shadows across the courtyard as you approach the dual facade. Each side mirrors the other with mathematical precision. Twin doorways, twin columns, twin halls that stretch into the mysterious depths of the sanctuary. Your scribe's eye marvels at this architectural poetry, where every stone has been placed with divine intention. You enter through the left portal dedicated to Sobek, the ancient crocodile deity who guards the Nile's depths. The air grows cooler as you step into the hypo-style hall, where massive columns rise like stone papyrus plants toward the ceiling. Sunlight filters through the clerestory windows, creating golden pools of light that dance across the hieroglyphic inscriptions covering every surface. Your fingers trace the carved reliefs as you move deeper into the temple. Here, Sobek appears in his many forms, sometimes as a crocodile-headed man holding the ankh of life, sometimes as the great crocodile himself, powerful and protective. The carvings tell stories of his dominion over the river's fertile waters, his role as creator and destroyer, the force that both nourishes and commands respect. Moving through the sacred spaces, you find yourself in the inner sanctuary where Sobek's statue once resided. Though the golden figure is long gone, you can sense the deity's presence in the carefully carved naos, the granite shrine that housed his divine essence. Sacred crocodiles once basked in the temple pools, living embodiments of the god's power, fed and honored by devoted priests. You cross to the temple's other half, where Horus the falcon god holds dominion over the sky. The architecture mirrors Sobek's side exactly, yet the atmosphere shifts subtly. Where Sobek's chambers felt grounded and earthly, Horus's domain reaches toward the heavens. The same columns, the same proportions, yet somehow lighter, more aerial. The relief carvings here show Horus in his solar glory, the falcon-headed god whose eyes are the sun and moon, whose flight crosses the celestial dome each day. You see him as the child of Isis and Osiris, as the rightful pharaoh of the gods, as the divine protector who watches over all of Egypt from his heavenly throne. In the central court between the two sanctuaries, you pause to contemplate this remarkable balance. Here is wisdom carved in stone, the understanding that opposing forces need not war against each other, but can coexist in perfect harmony. Sobek's earthbound power and Horus's celestial light, water and air, darkness and illumination, all finding their proper place in the divine order. The afternoon light shifts, casting new patterns across the ancient stones. You walk the perimeter of the temple complex, discovering the sacred well where crocodiles were kept, the birthing house where divine mysteries were celebrated, the outer walls covered in calendar texts and medical treatises that speak to the priest's vast knowledge. Standing in the temple's shadow as the day grows long, you understand something profound about the ancient Egyptian mind. This is not merely a building, but a physical manifestation of cosmic truth, that the universe thrives on balance, that seemingly opposite forces are often complementary aspects of a greater whole. The Nile flows peacefully beside the temple walls, its eternal rhythm unchanged since the first stones were laid here. Sobek's domain and Horus's realm meet at the water's edge, where earth touches sky in the perpetual dance of reflection. The temple stands as their eternal meeting place, where devotion to both aspects of divine power created something more beautiful than either could achieve alone. As evening approaches and the temple begins to surrender to shadow, you feel the deep peace that comes from witnessing perfect harmony. The scribes who planned this sacred space understood something timeless, that in balance we find not compromise but completion. In honoring both the depths and the heights, the earthly and the celestial, they created a monument to the profound wisdom of accepting all aspects of existence. The Temple of Kam Ombo stands eternal, its twin sanctuaries forever joined in stone and spirit, a testament to the ancient understanding that true power lies not in dominance, but in perfect, sacred balance. The sun hangs low in the western sky, casting long shadows across the sandy courtyard of the caravanserai. You watch as Kamwesit sets down his reed pens and carefully caps his ink pot, the day's documentation complete. The air carries the mingled scents of exotic spices, camel hide, and the sweet smoke of cooking fires that drift from the shelter of palm-thatched pavilions. Around him, the evening comes alive with the gentle sounds of commerce and fellowship. Nubian traders in flowing white robes arrange their wares beneath colorful awnings, ivory tusks gleaming like moonbeams, ebony wood polished to mirror darkness, and small leather pouches heavy with gold dust that catches the fading light. Their voices rise and fall in melodious conversation, words flowing like water between Egyptian, Nubian, and the countless dialects of the southern kingdoms. Kamwesit rises slowly, his joints stiff from hours bent over his writing tablet. The papyrus before him tells the story of this day's exchanges, not merely goods for gold, but the precious currency of knowledge and friendship that flows along these ancient trade routes. He watches an elderly Egyptian merchant demonstrate the proper way to test the purity of silver, while a young Nubian apprentice listens with wide, attentive eyes. The caravanserai spreads around them like a small city unto itself. Rectangular buildings of sun-baked brick form protective walls against the desert winds, their flat rooftops crowned with prayer flags that flutter gently in the evening breeze. Wooden gates, reinforced with bronze fittings, stand open to welcome travelers from every corner of the known world. Water flows steadily from a central well, its rope and bucket worked smooth by countless hands seeking refreshment after long journeys across the sand. Children dart between the merchant stalls, their laughter bright as temple bells. Some belong to the permanent residents who maintain this oasis of hospitality. Others travel with their families along the great trade routes. They chase each other around stacks of pottery, weave between the legs of patient camels, and pause to marvel at the strange and wonderful goods that arrive with each caravan. Kamwesit approaches a group of traders seated in a circle beneath a large pavilion. The evening meal is being prepared, flatbread warming over glowing coals, lentils simmering in clay pots seasoned with cumin and coriander. A Nubian woman with intricate braids adorned with gold beads gestures gracefully as she speaks, her words painting pictures of cities far to the south where great rivers meet and elephants walk freely through marketplaces. An elderly man from the eastern deserts shares stories of oases where date palms grow in impossible abundance, their sweet fruit traded for Egyptian linen so fine it seems woven from moonlight itself. His weathered hands move expressively, sketching maps in the air that speak of secret water sources and safe passages known only to those who have spent lifetimes reading the language of sand and star. Kamwesit settles onto a woven mat, his scribe's bag beside him. The merchants welcome him warmly, for they know the value of having their transactions recorded by one trained in the Pharaoh's own scribble school. But more than that, they recognize in him a keeper of stories, one who understands that trade routes carry more than goods. They carry the dreams and hopes of peoples separated by vast distances yet united by common needs. As darkness deepens, torches are lit around the courtyard. Their flames dance against the brick walls, casting moving shadows that seem to tell stories of their own. The conversation continues in hushed, reverent tones, for the desert night demands respect. Someone produces a wooden flute, its gentle melody weaving through the air like incense. A young trader from the distant south opens a small wooden box, revealing gems that seem to hold captured starlight, deep blue lapis lazuli, warm amber with insects preserved for eternity, and smooth green malachite that speaks of copper mines hidden in distant mountains. Each stone tells a story of its origin, of the hands that found it, shaped it, carried it across endless miles of desert and river. Kamwesit dips his pen once more, recording not just the exchange of these precious stones, but the wonder in the young trader's voice as he speaks of his homeland. These are the moments that matter, when strangers become friends over shared bread and stories, when the great family of humanity reveals itself beneath the watchful stars. The camel bells chime softly in the night breeze, a gentle reminder that tomorrow will bring new journeys, new meetings, new stories to be written in the endless book of human connection. But for now, in this peaceful haven between the river and the desert, all is quiet contentment and the simple joy of fellowship beneath the eternal Egyptian sky. The great sandstone cliffs of Abu Simbel rise from the Nile's western bank like golden sentinels, their faces carved with the eternal visage of Ramesses the Great. As the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, you find yourself standing beside Kamwesit at the base of these magnificent monuments, feeling the weight of centuries pressing gently against your shoulders. The massive statues tower above you, each one nearly 70 feet tall, their serene expressions gazing eastward across the sacred waters. The late afternoon light catches the subtle details in the stone, the curve of a nostril, the gentle slope of a ceremonial beard, the intricate folds of the royal headdress. Everything here speaks of permanence, of power that transcends the mortal realm. Kamwesit's voice is soft with reverence as he explains the ancient mysteries you are about to witness. The architects who designed these temples, he murmurs, his words barely audible above the gentle lapping of the Nile, understood secrets that few mortals comprehend. They built not merely with stone and bronze tools, but with sunlight itself. As you follow him toward the great temple's entrance, the setting sun casts long shadows across the forecourt. The massive doorway yawns before you like a portal to another world, its darkness promising cool relief from the day's heat. But Kamwesit raises his hand, asking you to wait, to watch, to witness something extraordinary. The sun continues its ancient journey, sinking lower with each passing moment. The light streaming across the Nile begins to change, becoming richer, more golden, touched with the warm amber of approaching twilight. You can feel the temperature cooling slightly as a gentle breeze carries the scent of river water and distant acacia trees. Then, as if orchestrated by the gods themselves, something magical begins to unfold. The setting sun aligns perfectly with the temple's axis, sending a shaft of brilliant golden light deep into the sacred interior. Through the outer hall it travels, past the towering columns carved with scenes of divine triumph, past the guardian statues that have stood watch for millennia. Watch carefully, Kamwesit whispers, his eyes reflecting the golden radiance. The light knows exactly where to go. The beam of sunset light penetrates deeper into the temple, illuminating hieroglyphs that seem to glow with their own inner fire. Sacred texts and royal cartouches emerge from shadow like ancient secrets being whispered by the light itself. The very air inside the temple seems to shimmer with golden particles, as if the sunlight has transformed into something more substantial, more divine. At the temple's heart, in the sacred sanctuary where few mortals are permitted to enter, 4 seated statues await this daily miracle. 3 of them Ra-Horakhti, Ra-Meses as a god, and Amun-Ra gradually emerge into the light as the sun's rays penetrate the temple's depths. But the 4th figure, Ta, god of the underworld, remains perpetually in shadow, just as the ancient architects intended. The mathematical precision required for this daily miracle fills you with quiet awe. These builders calculated not just angles and measurements, but the very movement of celestial bodies across thousands of years. They carved and positioned every stone with such accuracy that even after millennia, the sun still finds its mark with perfect precision. Khammweset explains how this alignment occurs only twice each year, once near the pharaoh's birthday and once near his coronation day. But here, at Abu Simbel, the daily sunset creates its own smaller miracle, a reminder that the divine order encompasses both the eternal and the everyday, both the cosmic and the intimate. As the light begins to fade and the sun sinks toward the horizon, the temple gradually returns to shadow. The golden radiance retreats slowly, reluctantly, like a tide flowing back to its source. Soon only the entrance remains illuminated, framing the darkening interior like a doorway between day and night, between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. The evening air grows cooler now, carrying the sounds of birds returning to their roosts and the gentle murmur of water against stone. Stars begin to appear in the deepening sky, distant and serene, eternal witnesses to these daily transformations of light and shadow. Standing here beside the Nile, with the great temple settling into peaceful darkness behind you, you feel connected to something larger than yourself. The ancient architects who planned this marvel understood that architecture could be more than mere shelter. It could be a bridge between earth and sky, between human aspiration and divine truth. The day's heat continues to dissipate into the cooling air, and the sound of water lapping against the riverbank creates a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. Here, where stone and sunlight dance their eternal dance, where mathematics becomes poetry and engineering becomes prayer, the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds grows thin as twilight mist. In this place of calculated wonder, as darkness gently embraces the temple and the river flows toward tomorrow's dawn, you understand that some mysteries are meant not to be solved, but simply to be witnessed, experienced, and carried quietly in the heart like treasures of light preserved against the darkness. The morning sun casts long shadows across the granite outcroppings that mark the traditional boundary between the lands of Egypt and Nubia. Here, where the Nile flows between towering cliffs of rose-colored stone, you find yourself standing beside Khammweset as he sets down his reed pens and papyrus scrolls. The scribe's weathered hands pause in their work, and his eyes lift to take in the magnificent vista before him. This is no harsh frontier of conflict or division, but rather a gentle meeting place where 2 great civilizations have learned to dance together like the currents of the sacred river itself. The air is warm and still, carrying the mingled scents of frankincense from Nubian traders and the familiar lotus blossoms of Egyptian gardens. Palm fronds rustle softly in the breeze, creating a whispered conversation between the lands. Khammweset watches as a group of Nubian merchants guides their laden donkeys along the well-worn path beside the river. Their cargo includes precious ivory, exotic feathers that shimmer like captured sunlight, and pouches of gold dust that catch the morning rays. The merchants call out friendly greetings in their melodious language, their voices carrying across the water like music. Some wear the traditional white linens of Egypt, while others sport the colorful woven fabrics of their homeland, creating a beautiful tapestry of human diversity. Near the water's edge, Egyptian fishermen work alongside their Nubian neighbors, their nets moving in practiced harmony. Children from both cultures play together in the shallows, their laughter echoing off the stone cliffs. They splash and dive, their dark skin glistening in the dappled sunlight that filters through the palm branches. The river itself seems to smile at their innocent joy, its waters gurgling softly around the smooth stones of the shore. The scribe notices a young Egyptian woman sitting beside a Nubian man, both watching over a toddler who toddles between them on unsteady legs. The child's features blend the beauty of both peoples, his eyes holding the wisdom of ancient bloodlines. The couple speaks quietly in the gentle murmur of shared intimacy, switching effortlessly between languages as naturally as the river flows between its banks. A Nubian elder approaches Kamwesit, his staff tapping rhythmically against the packed earth. His beard is white as the cataract's foam, and his eyes hold the depth of one who has witnessed many seasons along this sacred border. He gestures toward the flowing water and speaks in careful Egyptian, his accent lending music to the familiar words. He tells of his grandfather's time when the same peaceful trade and friendship flourished here, and how his own children now continue this legacy of understanding. The afternoon brings a gentle market atmosphere to this border crossing. Nubian women display beautiful pottery with distinctive geometric patterns, their fingers tracing the designs as they explain the stories woven into each piece. Egyptian artisans examine the work with genuine appreciation, running their hands over the smooth surfaces and nodding with the recognition of one craftsperson understanding another's skill. The scent of cooking fires begins to drift across the gathering, and Kamwesit observes how recipes and techniques flow as freely as conversation between the two peoples. A Nubian grandmother shows an Egyptian mother how to prepare a particular grain dish, while the Egyptian woman shares her knowledge of preserving fish in the desert heat. The children gather around both women, their small hands helping with simple tasks, learning the wisdom of both cultures without even realizing it. As the sun begins its descent toward the western cliffs, the colors of the sky deepen from gold to amber to the soft rose of desert stone. The Nile reflects these hues, becoming a ribbon of liquid light that binds the two lands together. Kamwesit dips his reed pen into fresh ink and begins to write, capturing not just the events of this day, but the spirit of harmony that flows as eternally as the great river itself. The evening brings torches and oil lamps that flicker like earthbound stars along both sides of the border. Families gather for their evening meals, and the sounds of conversation, gentle laughter, and children's sleepy voices create a symphony of contentment. The Nile continues its ancient journey toward the distant sea, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of all who call its banks home. Here, in this peaceful place where two worlds meet and mingle, Kamwesit completes another page of his endless scroll, documenting not conquest or conflict, but the simple, profound beauty of human understanding. The stars begin to emerge in the darkening sky, and the scribe feels the deep satisfaction of witnessing how love and trade, friendship and family, can make even the most distant borders feel like home. The morning sun casts long shadows across the granite cliffs of Aswan as you, Kamwesit, settle yourself on a smooth boulder overlooking the ancient quarries. The sacred Nile flows peacefully behind you, its waters catching the golden light like scattered jewels. Your papyrus scrolls rest beside you, reed pen at the ready, as you prepare to document the timeless craft of the stone cutters. Below in the quarry, the master stoneworkers have already begun their daily ritual. Their bronze tools gleam in the early light as they examine the granite face, running weathered hands along the stone's surface, feeling for the grain that will guide their cuts. The sound of their gentle tapping echoes softly against the cliff walls, a rhythmic percussion that has resonated here for countless generations. You dip your pen in fresh ink and begin to write, describing how the quarrymen select their stone with the reverence of priests choosing offerings for the gods. Each block of granite holds within it the potential for eternity, perhaps a column for a temple to Amun-Ra, or a statue that will guard a pharaoh's tomb for thousands of years. The workers understand this sacred responsibility, and their movements carry the weight of tradition. The technique they employ is ancient beyond memory, passed down from master to apprentice like a precious inheritance. First, they mark the stone with ochre, outlining the shape they wish to extract. Then comes the patient work of creating channels around the marked granite. Using copper tools and wooden wedges, they chip and scrape with methodical precision, never rushing, never forcing the stone to yield before it is ready. As the morning progresses, you watch a team prepare to split a massive block. They fill the channels they have carved with dry wooden wedges, then slowly pour water over them. The wood swells gradually, exerting gentle but irresistible pressure against the granite. There is something almost magical in this process. The soft wood persuading the hard stone, water accomplishing what force cannot. The workers wait patiently, some sharing bread and dates in the shade, others sharpening their tools with smooth stones. The sound of cracking granite finally breaks the peaceful morning air, not harsh or violent, but clean and satisfying like the snapping of a dry branch. The massive block separates along its natural grain, revealing the beautiful pink and black speckled surface that will one day grace a temple wall. The quarrymen smile and nod to each other, their satisfaction quiet and deep. You continue writing, noting how the younger apprentices learn by watching and gradually taking on simpler tasks. A boy no older than 12 carefully sweeps granite dust from the work area, his movements precise and respectful. An older youth practices marking stones under the watchful eye of his master, learning to read the granite's hidden structure, to understand where it wishes to break. The heat of the day begins to build, but the work continues at its unhurried pace. The quarrymen understand that granite cannot be rushed. Some of the blocks they work today were begun by their fathers or even their grandfathers. Time moves differently here, measured not in days but in generations, not in seasons but in dynasties. As you observe and write, you notice the reverence with which the workers treat each piece of stone. They brush away dust with gentle strokes, examine each surface for flaws or hidden beauty. When they must move a finished block, they do so with careful ceremony, using wooden rollers and hemp ropes, singing ancient working songs that help them coordinate their movements and honor the stone's journey from cliff to monument. The Nile continues its eternal flow beside the quarries, and you reflect on how both the river and the quarrymen shape the eternal character of Egypt. The water carves the landscape over millennia, while human hands work the stone that will outlast the very dynasties that commission it. There is poetry in this collaboration between human skill and natural forces, between the temporary and the eternal. As afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, you make your final notes about the quarries of Aswan. The granite here is special, harder than limestone, more beautiful than sandstone, capable of taking a polish that gleams like the surface of the sacred river itself. This stone will travel north along the Nile, carrying with it the skill and reverence of the quarrymen who freed it from the living rock. The workers begin to gather their tools as the day's heat reaches its peak. Tomorrow they will return to continue their ancient work, patient as the granite itself, knowing that what they create today will endure long after the last pharaoh has been forgotten, standing as testament to human skill and the eternal nature of stone. The morning sun casts long shadows across the granite boulders as you, Kawimwesit, approach the sacred waters of the first cataract. Here, where the great Nile encounters the ancient stones of Nubia, the river transforms from its familiar gentle flow into something altogether more spirited, yet no less magnificent. The sound reaches you first, a deep, rhythmic murmur that speaks of water meeting stone in an eternal dance that has continued since the time of the first pharaohs. You pause at the water's edge, your reed sandals finding purchase on the smooth granite that has been polished by countless seasons of flood and recession. The papyrus scrolls in your leather satchel rustle softly in the morning breeze, but your attention is entirely captured by the spectacle before you. The Nile, usually so placid and predictable in its journey through the valley, here reveals its hidden power as it cascades over and around the dark granite formations that rise like sleeping giants from the riverbed. The water itself seems transformed, no longer the muddy brown of the fertile valley, but clear and bright, catching the early sunlight in countless tiny mirrors that dance and sparkle with each ripple. You can see straight down to the river bottom in many places, where the granite continues its ancient story beneath the surface, worn smooth by millennia of patient water. Small fish dart between the submerged rocks, their silver scales flashing like coins thrown into a sacred pool. As you settle onto a comfortable boulder to observe and perhaps make notes of this remarkable sight, you notice how the sound changes with your attention. What seemed at first like a simple rushing becomes a complex symphony. The deeper notes of water flowing around the largest stones, the higher tinkling of smaller cascades, the gentle lapping where calmer pools have formed in the granite's embrace. It is music older than any temple hymn, yet somehow perfectly harmonious with the sacred songs you have transcribed in the Pharaoh's court. A family of ibises picks their way carefully along the water's edge, their long beaks probing between the rocks for small fish and insects. They move with the same unhurried dignity that you have come to associate with all life along the Nile, completely at home in this landscape of stone and rushing water. One pauses to regard you with a bright eye, then continues its methodical search, untroubled by your presence. You understand now why the ancients considered this place sacred, why the boundary between Egypt and Nubia was drawn here by the gods themselves. This is where the Nile reveals both its power and its wisdom, powerful enough to carve through solid granite over countless ages, yet wise enough to do so gradually, patiently, never in destructive fury, but always with purpose. The cataract waters do not rage or storm. They simply persist, finding their way around and through obstacles with the same quiet determination that has made the river the lifeline of your civilization. The granite itself tells a story as you run your hand over its surface. Smooth in places where the water's touch has been constant, rough where it lies beyond the river's reach, marked with the subtle patterns that speak of unimaginable age. These stones were old when the first dynasty was founded, old when the Great Pyramids were planned and built. They will remain long after your own scrolls have crumbled to dust, yet in this moment you feel connected to their eternal patience. A gentle breeze carries the scent of water over stone, clean and fresh, different from the rich earthiness of the valley's irrigated fields. Here is the Nile in its most elemental form, before it gathers the silt that will make the delta fertile, before it receives the offerings of a dozen temples, before it becomes the highway of commerce and communication that binds your kingdom together. Here it is simply water and stone and sunlight, engaged in their timeless conversation. As the sun climbs higher, the light on the water shifts and changes, creating new patterns of brilliance and shadow. You find yourself relaxing into the rhythm of observation, letting the sound and sight of the cataract waters wash over you like a gentle meditation. This is how knowledge comes. You reflect not through force or haste, but through patient attention, through allowing yourself to become part of the landscape you seek to understand. The morning grows warm, and you know that soon you must continue your journey, must return to the practical matters of travel and documentation. But for now, you are content to sit among these ancient stones, watching the eternal dance of water and granite, feeling yourself a small but integral part of the great story that the Nile tells as it flows toward the distant sea. The sacred waters of the Nile lap gently against the ancient stones of Pharaoh, creating a rhythm as old as time itself. You stand beside Khaimwesit on the bow of the ceremonial barge, watching as the mystical island emerges from the morning mist like a vision from the realm of the gods. The air here feels different, charged with an energy that makes your skin tingle with reverence and wonder. The temple of Isis rises before you, its towering pylons catching the first golden rays of dawn. Carved hieroglyphs tell stories of divine love and eternal protection, their sacred symbols seeming to shimmer in the soft light. Khaimwesit's breathing has slowed to match the gentle rhythm of the water against stone, and you feel your own heartbeat settling into the same peaceful cadence. As the barge glides closer to the stone steps, you notice how the island seems to float suspended between earth and sky, between the mortal world and the divine realm. Palm fronds whisper secrets in the morning breeze, their shadows dancing across weathered granite surfaces that have witnessed countless centuries of devotion. The scent of frankincense drifts from the temple chambers, mixing with the clean, life-giving smell of the sacred river. White-robed priests move like gentle spirits through the colonnaded halls, their bare feet silent against polished stone floors. Their movements are measured, deliberate, each gesture part of a sacred dance performed in honor of the goddess mother. One elderly priest approaches, his face lined with wisdom and serenity, his eyes holding the deep peace of one who has spent decades in communion with the divine. The priest extends weathered hands in greeting, and Kamwesit bows deeply, his scribe's palette held respectfully at his side. Words are exchanged in hushed tones, but the meaning transcends language. This is a place where souls speak to souls, where the eternal mysteries of life and death and rebirth are honored through ritual as ancient as the stars themselves. You follow Kamwesit through corridors where stone lotus blossoms seem to bloom eternally from carved pillars. Sunbeams filter through clerestory windows, creating pools of golden light that warm the cool stone beneath your feet. The very air seems to hum with an otherworldly presence, as if the goddess herself walks these sacred halls, her invisible hands blessing all who enter with reverent hearts. In the inner sanctuary, a small oil lamp flickers before a statue of Isis, her arms outstretched in eternal protection. The flame dances without wavering, casting shifting shadows that bring the carved features to life. Kamwesit kneels before the altar, his head bowed in silent prayer, and you feel the weight of millennia pressing gently upon your shoulders like a blessing. The priest begins a soft chant, his voice joining with others throughout the temple complex in a harmony that seems to resonate through the very stones. The sound is neither loud nor demanding, but rather like a gentle river of sound that flows around you, through you, carrying away the tensions and worries of the everyday world. Your breathing naturally slows to match the rhythm of the ancient words. Incense spirals lazily upward from bronze braziers, the sacred smoke carrying prayers and petitions to the realm beyond sight. The sweet, mysterious fragrance fills your lungs, and with each breath you feel yourself sinking deeper into the profound peace that permeates this island sanctuary. Time seems to stretch and flow like honey, golden and thick with meaning. Through the temple windows, the Nile stretches endlessly, its waters reflecting the sky like a mirror between worlds. Somewhere in the distance, a ibis calls softly, its voice adding to the symphony of peace that surrounds you. The sound of gentle waves against stone continues its eternal rhythm, a heartbeat that has pulsed steadily since the first pharaohs walked these sacred shores. Kamwesit rises slowly from his prayers, his face transformed by the deep serenity that fills this place. His eyes meet yours, and in that moment you share an understanding that needs no words. This island, this temple, this moment of connection with the divine will remain with you both forever, a touchstone of peace to carry back into the world. As you prepare to leave this sanctuary, you notice how the very stones seem to glow with accumulated blessing, how each carved hieroglyph pulses gently with sacred energy. The goddess's presence lingers in every corner, every shadow, every breath of incense-scented air. And as the barge carries you away from Pharaoh, the island's peace travels with you, settling into your bones like a gift from the eternal river itself. The sacred island slowly disappears into the morning haze, but its blessing remains, a gentle warmth in your heart that will illuminate all your days to come. The evening light filters through the papyrus curtains of Kamwesit's quarters, casting long golden shadows across the scrolls that now fill every corner of his simple room. Months of travel have transformed this space into a treasury of knowledge, each scroll carefully bound with reed fibers, each marking a different village, a different story, a different face along the sacred Nile. Kamwesit sits cross-legged on his sleeping mat, his weathered hands moving with the practiced grace of years as he sorts through his collection. The familiar weight of papyrus between his fingers brings comfort, like greeting old friends. Here, a scroll detailing the intricate irrigation systems of a delta farming community. There, careful drawings of the star charts used by Nubian navigators. Each document whispers of the journey that brought it into being. The scribe's eyes, now bearing the gentle lines that come from squinting at distant horizons and focusing on fine details, move slowly across a particularly treasured scroll. It contains his observations from the Temple of Pharaoh, where he witnessed priests conducting the daily ritual of awakening the goddess Isis. He remembers the soft chanting that drifted across the water at dawn, the careful precision with which each offering was placed, the way the morning light seemed to dance with ancient purpose across the temple walls. Outside his window, the Nile flows with its eternal rhythm, neither hurried nor hesitant. Its waters carry the same sediments that nourished the fields of his childhood, the same gentle current that has witnessed countless generations of scribes, farmers, fishermen, and dreamers. Tonight, as on every night of his journey, the river sings its quiet lullaby to all who dwell along its banks. Khaimwesit unfurls a scroll containing sketches of the various boats he has traveled upon. Reed boats that skimmed like water birds across shallow lagoons. Sturdy wooden vessels that carried grain from Upper Egypt to the Mediterranean ports. Royal barges adorned with gold and precious stones, their sails billowing like clouds against the desert sky. Each vessel had its own character, its own purpose in the great tapestry of Egyptian life. The diversity astounds him still. In the northern marshlands, he documented how families built their homes entirely from papyrus reeds, creating dwellings that swayed gently with the wind yet stood firm against floods. In the southern quarries, he watched master stonecutters shape granite with techniques passed down through generations, their work destined for temples and monuments that would outlast centuries. Yet beneath this wonderful diversity, Khaimwesit has discovered something profound. Whether north or south, in fertile delta or rocky cataract, the people share common rhythms. They wake with the sun and follow the river's moods. They honor their ancestors and welcome strangers with bread and beer. They tell stories under star-filled skies and find meaning in the changing seasons. His fingers trace the hieroglyphs he has written to describe these universal truths. The symbol for unity appears frequently in his notes, not because Egypt lacks variety, but because its variety springs from a common source, like the many branches of the Nile Delta all flowing from the same eternal river. The scribe sets down his reed pen and stretches his shoulders, feeling the pleasant ache of hours spent in peaceful concentration. Through his window, he can see the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Venus shines with particular brightness tonight, the star that guides both fishermen casting nets in pre-dawn darkness and lovers walking along moonlit riverbanks. Tomorrow, he will begin the final scroll of his journey, the one that will attempt to capture not just what he has observed, but what he has felt. How does one describe the way morning mist rises from the river like the breath of sleeping gods? How does one convey the satisfaction of sharing a simple meal with strangers who become friends? How does one record the deep peace that comes from understanding one's place in an ancient and continuing story? These questions do not trouble him as they once might have. Some truths he has learned are best experienced rather than explained, felt rather than analyzed. His scrolls will preserve the facts and observations for future generations, but the wisdom of his journey lies now in the gentle rhythm of his breathing, in the calm acceptance behind his eyes, in the way his hands move with unconscious grace as they sort and organize the treasures of his travels. The Nile continues its ancient song outside his window, carrying away the day's concerns and welcoming the restorative darkness of night. Khaimwesit smiles softly, knowing that tomorrow will bring new understanding, and that the sacred river will continue flowing long after his own journey reaches its peaceful completion. The morning sun rises gently over the sacred waters, casting ribbons of gold across the Nile's surface as Khaimwesit stands at the riverbank one final time. His leather satchel rests beside him, heavy now with the weight of countless scrolls, each one a careful record of his journey through the heart of ancient Egypt. The papyrus within holds observations of temple ceremonies, detailed sketches of lotus blossoms, and descriptions of the kind merchants who shared their stories along the way. A gentle breeze carries the familiar scent of river mud and blooming water lilies across the water. Khaemwesit breathes deeply, feeling the warm air fill his lungs as he gazes northward toward Memphis, where his journey began so many weeks ago. The royal barge that will carry him home sways peacefully at the dock, its white linen sail billowing softly in the morning wind. The boat's wooden hull gleams with fresh oil, and colorful pennants flutter like prayer flags against the clear blue sky. Behind him, the last village of his southern journey awakens slowly. Clay ovens begin to smoke as bakers prepare their morning bread, and children's laughter echoes from the narrow streets between mud brick houses. Palm trees rustle overhead, their fronds creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the sandy ground. Everything moves at the unhurried pace of river life, following rhythms as old as the pharaohs themselves. Khaemwesit carefully opens one of his scrolls, reviewing his sketches of the great temples at Elephantine Island. His reed pen has captured every detail, the massive stone pillars carved with hieroglyphs telling stories of gods and kings, the sacred pools where priests performed their daily rituals, the offerings of flowers and incense that filled the air with sweetness. Each drawing represents hours of patient observation, sitting quietly in temple courtyards while life flowed around him like the eternal river. The sound of sandaled feet on wooden planks announces the arrival of the boat captain, an elderly man with kind eyes and weathered hands who has navigated these waters for 40 seasons. He greets Khaemwesit with a gentle nod and begins preparing the vessel for departure. The crew moves with quiet efficiency, loading supplies of dates and dried fish, clay jars of fresh water, and rolled reed mats for sleeping under the stars. As the scribe carefully places his precious scrolls in a protective cedar box, he reflects on all he has witnessed during his months along the Nile. He has documented the changing seasons, from the flooding waters that brought fertile mud to the fields, to the harvest time when golden grain bent heavy in the breeze. He has recorded the songs of farmers working in their fields, the prayers of pilgrims visiting sacred sites, and the ancient stories shared by village elders around evening fires. The boat begins to move away from shore with barely a sound, gliding into the main channel where the current runs strongest. Khaemwesit settles comfortably on cushions arranged near the bow, watching the landscape slowly change as they travel north. Date palms give way to fields of barley and emmer wheat, their green stalks swaying in the warm afternoon light. Fishermen wave from their small boats, their nets glinting like silver in the sun. Hours pass in peaceful contemplation as the Nile carries them homeward. The scribe opens another scroll and begins writing his final observations, not just of places and people, but of the deeper understanding he has gained about his role as keeper of knowledge. He realizes now that his careful records will preserve not just facts and images, but the very spirit of Egyptian civilization. Future generations will read his scrolls and feel the warmth of temple stones, smell the incense of sacred ceremonies, and hear the gentle lapping of Nile waters against papyrus reeds. The afternoon sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of rose and gold. Birds return to their roosts in the riverside trees, ibis and herons settling into the shallows, hawks circling high above the cliffs. The eternal rhythm of day and night continues, as it has for thousands of years, as it will for thousands more. Khaemwesit sets down his reed pen and gazes across the water, understanding finally that he is not just recording history, he is part of it. His scrolls will join the great libraries of Memphis and Thebes, adding their voice to the chorus of scribes who have preserved the wisdom and beauty of Egypt throughout the ages. The Nile flows on toward the sea, carrying with it the stories of a civilization that honors both the past and the future, written in careful hieroglyphs on papyrus that will endure as long as the river itself. The sacred waters continue their journey north, and Kamweset continues his, surrounded by peace and the eternal flow of knowledge passing from one generation to the next.